vacuum every 2 days.
I feel like all I do is sweep and vacuum up my daughter and my wife's hair. Yeah, it's just infested. An infested house. All right, you ready?
Yeah. How do you normally do you normally just start out with the introduction?
I have this big elaborate introduction where it goes, "Hey guys, welcome to this one time. Today my guest is John Palmer. Welcome."
All right, well, thank you for having me on. That was pretty elaborate.
Yeah, very, very over the top.
Yeah.
But no, just stay on top of the mic and let's have some good conversation, man.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for wanting to do this. I know we have talked about it before, and recently you approached me, and you were kind of one of the driving forces for me to get going again, because it took a backseat. The podcast took a backseat to COVID, which is kind of like the opposite of what people did. Whereas like everybody was stuck at home and they're like, hey, I'm gonna start a podcast. And, at work, we're sold out of any recording equipment for, weeks and weeks on end. And I went the opposite way. I just felt like I had a lot more on my plate. It was a lot more stress I wasn't used to.
Sure.
And had more of like a hands-on day to day with my kids, which was a great thing. But definitely didn't allow me what I normally would do in my personal endeavors. But thanks for coming on and pushing me to get this going again. Mm-hmm. And I really think people are going to enjoy listening to how that mind works. Should we call it a DC mind, or should we call it just, because you've lived all over the place? Can you tell the folks what your passions in life are and what you do? Sure.
I mean, do you want me to start from the beginning, or
just picture us? Unfortunately, we don't have any alcohol in front of us, but or a proper joint. But just like if we were hanging out and I'm just like, hey, John, what's up, man?
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah, well, I'm not shy, and this is and I do appreciate you saying that, and this is very interesting for me, and I thought I like to talk about things that aren't just I don't know, banal in nature. Things
you're not a very like small talk guy. You kind of come through with like a curveball where I'm like, whoa, okay, let's get into this. Which I love. I appreciate that. So I think people are going to see that.
It's just more fun. You know what I mean? It's just like and that's really what my life has been. It's just I've kind of arranged my life in a way. I'll get to kind of my background in a moment, but just how my goal as an adult, even before I was an adult, and I'll explain how all this came to be, is really to put myself in a position where I really don't have to do anything I don't want to do ever. You know what I mean? Everything I've done is somehow related to that, and so. And I like to, kind of borrow from Louis C.K., another comedian. I know he's not too popular right now, but the one point is that you always have a trump card. If you absolutely don't want to do something, you can always kill yourself. You can only do it one time, but there's never a reason why you have to do something that you absolutely don't want to do ever in life. Like that you've got one out, you know what I mean? Now, that doesn't appeal to me. You know what I mean? So I'd rather do it like in a better way, like putting myself in a position to do something that I love and have that be my job. I don't ever stop working. I don't really ever start working. It's when I'm awake, my job is I'm employed at Guitar Center as an instrument lessons instructor for guitar and bass, and all of my that takes care of my needs in life. I earn a wage that pays for my house and my food and my car and the things that I want, and but the reason for that is because I don't really want to do anything else. And it's the same thing I do at home. And that's why, my students and stuff will ask me, if it, they'll send me little questions, throughout the week. If they forget something, you never bother me, because if I'm not doing this with you, I'm doing it with my cats. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't stop. As soon as I finish drinking the coffee, then I'm in the room and I'm reading articles on how to teach. It all relates, even if it's not necessarily specifically related to music, or not related to music, specifically an article or a piece of information specifically about music. It relates in some way, because everything relates. Yeah, everything's the same, and it's could be something how to relate to people better, how to deliver the message. It kind of the delivery system when you're teaching and when you're giving information, and there's different types of learners. And so when you can identify that and you can get information into people, oftentimes without them really realizing it, you know what I mean? That's kind of the goal. And, you know, maybe it might be a good time to kind of back up, because people might get a little confused on how I kind of came to this. I'm not going to take credit for almost all of any of this. You know what I mean? Just a couple kind of some things that I think that are just kind of, let's maybe establish some basic premises just with me, how I feel about things. You know what I mean? I think that, who we are in life is a combination of an almost immeasurable amount of factors. Just our personalities, whether you think you're original or not, you're not at all. Yeah. All of our personalities are nothing more than a combination of traits of every trait that we've admired or liked from everyone we've ever come in contact with. That's who we are. Mm-hmm. We're an amalgam of everyone that we like, or the things that we like about everyone that we've ever known, even if it's someone that we didn't know, if someone that we knew in some peripheral manner. Could be an actor that you liked. You know what I mean? Like you pick up mannerisms, people that you admire in some way, whether that's your father, your parents, your friends, you know what I mean? That's just, and so that's kind of a premise number one. Mm-hmm. So we're not really responsible for most of our good points or our bad. You know what I mean? Really, we're not. You know what I mean? And I think that when you come to that conclusion, it makes you a humble person, because you realize that your successes in life have very little to do with your own industry oftentimes. Do you know what I mean? All we, it's, both you and I are in the music business. So we'll use that kind of, but it's an analogy. It could be an analogy for really anything. Everything works the same way. Mm-hmm. So, what was I saying? I just lost my train of thought. Honestly, I apologize.
No. You were kind of touching on what I was going to say, is what Sam Harris will also kind of put out there, that there is no true free will, where you're kind of dancing around that, because you're almost the combination, the accumulation of all your previous histories, even genetics, all that kind of takes into account on whether you'll be more, more daredevilish or more risky in life in general.
Sure.
But yeah, you're kind of dancing around that topic where there might not be free will, but I think you're not going that far. You're basically just saying that our personalities are formulated around what we have taken in already to this point, and you kind of make that into who you are. Yeah. But you're not entirely original.
No, and I think that's a combination of organic factors, unconscious factors, and conscious factors. And then again, and I think too, I sometimes go off on a little tangent, but it'll relate, and so this kind of reminded me of another point that I've always been kind of an observer, and that's been my job. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so I think that oftentimes people radically underestimate how complex everything is in some ways, but in the same way, I find myself sounding more and more like a Buddhist the older I get, and my students hate it, because it's like, I don't really ever give them a straight answer, but at the same time, it's easy. Oftentimes the answer is very, very easy, but going about it might take a while. There might be a number of different things. Like for me, maybe I'll slowly just, I'll get to a full background in a moment, but I don't have any problem saying this. For most of my life, I'm 46 years old. From the time I was 15 to 40, I was a very, 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 very active, severe alcoholic. You know what I mean? And so,
what is severe? I guess to somebody. I mean, I'm a pretty avid drinker myself, so I'm like, am I severe? But what's your history with being severe?
I guess getting to the point where there's really nothing else I wanted to do, and it ruled my life. And towards the end there, I couldn't stop. You know what I mean? I wouldn't stop. I'd wake up the next day. The DTs were so bad. And my metabolism is I'm 5'10" and 130 pounds, and my metabolism is rocket fast. Mm-hmm. And if I didn't drink fast enough, I'd actually start going through DTs if I just nursed a drink, towards the end there. Shit. You know what I mean? Like the last year, maybe I drank, maybe 2 years, I'd actually start going to DTs if I just couldn't pound liquor. You know what I mean?
Away,
yeah. And so, so that, going through that, so the answer to that problem is easy. Quit drinking. Right? The answer is easy. You know what I mean? Like, right? But it's, but going about that requires a number of other things, because you've got to look at what when you get into recovery, a program of recovery, whatever it's from, very little, whatever it is that's your problem, whatever it is you're addicted to is just a symptom of a lot of other things. I mean, that's just how you've dealt with it. And so my problem was not the fact that I drank. That was one of my problems, but the biggest problem was I wasn't a functioning person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And that used alcohol. That was what I used to medicate myself. And so, successfully stopping drinking required me to become a better person and fix my flaws, as much as I could, and a program of recovery, an effective one, doesn't preach perfection. We're not going to be perfect. All we can do is just try, that we can do the best we can every day and appreciate the things. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I was an alcoholic, because normal people don't have to go through this rigorous process of introspection to become a functioning person, because they function. However, there's not a pressing need. However, everyone needs to improve themselves. But if you're not addicted to something, if your life isn't getting ruined, if you're not losing your possessions, if you're not ruining your relationships, then nothing's staring you in the face saying that you have to be a more patient person.
Yeah.
So it's funny, my recovery buddies, so I have some friends that have recovered, and I have friends that are what people in recovery call normies. People that just drink normally, just not, and I'm not one of these people that is against it. It's not good for me. I can't do it, but I think alcohol is one of the greatest things ever people figured out how to make. Yeah. I love it. You know what I mean? If I could drink it and stop, I would do it. I'd do it right now. You know what I mean? If I could stop, but I can't do it anymore. But I am glad, because I don't know that I would have worked on myself. I don't know. There might not have been a need to me. I would have.
You didn't have that need for, like you said, you didn't have that adversity to become a better person. Because without that challenge, maybe you just go, living your normal life and not experiencing anything that would let you be more self-introspective.
Sure. Yeah. And I'd be one of those people that gets mad because the line's taking too long at Walmart, or because someone's in front of them. And, it's funny. You see these people. It's funny how the stigma that goes along with addiction, when people that make it through it are much better people. It's funny. I watch people. First of all, it's like a vampire. I can tell who's an addict, who's not, before they even know it. You know what I mean? Yes. I can tell you.
Do you, hold on. Do you see maybe physical tics?
It's just
like posture.
Well, that's the obvious stuff.
Skin.
No, I can just tell by someone's personality who is predispositioned or predisposed rather to addiction. I can tell you. I can go everyone that you and I know together. I can tell you whether they have the potential to be an addict or not. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I think most addicts could. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying it's just you recognize it takes one to know one, right?
Yeah.
So sure. There's something about us.
You're like, oh, I feel you, buddy. I feel you. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I could tell. It doesn't mean they ever will. You know what I mean? It's a lot again, but so. The rest of the world looks like they're chasing their tails in this lower level of garbage and things that are unimportant. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And when you have lost everything, I did. When I first moved out to Arizona, I moved out with a suitcase of a couple clothes. I left it behind a house in Washington, D.C. that was extremely nice. It was one of those places where you walk in, you're like, it's here. You know what I mean? It was one of those kind of houses. The last place I lived in D.C., it could have been the ambassador to Nigeria's house, dude. I'm serious. It wasn't huge, but it was nice inside. It had really nice, I had antique instruments.
What?
Just, it was gone. You know what I mean?
What were you doing in D.C.? That's where you grew up.
Yeah, and I was working at the time. I was teaching, playing music full time. And got burnt out. My alcoholism was getting out of control. It got to the point where I had no fun unless I was drinking. So everything that I did in life was I was just kind of waiting for it to end. I didn't enjoy any of it, didn't appreciate any of it at all. You know what I mean? I had a life where, again, I had the life I have now where I didn't have to do anything I didn't want to do ever. You know what I mean? I taught music and I played music every day. Back then I was actually a working musician. I played 11 gigs a week. Because I played 3 on Saturdays and Sundays. So I did a brunch, a matinee, and a nightclub show. And then every night during the week, Monday through Friday, I had regular gigs, Monday, Wednesday night, Thursday, and Friday night. And then Tuesday would be like a floater, and sometimes we play old folks' homes, at 7 o'clock. I could still do a night gig. So anyway, don't want to go off on a really long tangent, but that's what I was kind of doing. And I'd done that since I was a teenager, and I just gotten extremely burnt out. And the alcohol, and also just not happy there. DC's a much different place. It's a much different place. East Coast cities are different places than West Coast. It's and like I kind of, if you just look at some numbers just for a moment, just to kind of put it into perspective, like I was saying the other day, DC's roughly half the size of Mesa, with roughly 10 times the population. There's 5.15 million people right now in DC, and there's 37,000 in Mesa. Yeah. Right. So that it's different there. You know what I mean? People are intense. They're in a hurry. It's hard to do everything.
The cold will get you too.
Yeah, and the cold. And that's another thing. I was tired of the winter. I was tired of the agitation. Maybe a better way to put it, a shorter way to put it, this is that you really have to put a lot of effort into being a nice person in a place like DC, because the social acceptable standards of behavior are different. Like it's okay to pop off. Like it's nothing like you be in line at a grocery store, and then line next over to you, two people start cussing each other out and almost come to fights. That's just what happens at the grocery store. That's nothing unusual. That's how I grew up. I grew up with, you know what I mean? That's how people are. You know what I mean? The instant a light turns green, the honking starts. It's just normal. You know what I mean? When I first moved here, it took me about 6 months to relax, like just to fit in with people here. And I was so shocked at how nice people were. I'd call my sister back home and tell her something like, like someone thank me for coming to the store. I didn't even buy anything. They're like, what is their problem? It's like, like I've said this before, it's like people back home, if they're nice, they're working you for something, because, it's a place, not only is it a place where there's a lot of people, anytime you have a ton of people, there's people that are able to work people, there's a game to be played, but it's also one of the most popular tourist destinations on the planet. I mean, at any point, there's 5.15 million people that live in DC, but at any given day, there's at least 500 extra thousand people there that are just there from all over the world. And so those are the, so there's kind of a feeling out process with, not really evil predators, but basically rip-off artists and con-off artists, because initially they're going to think you're a tourist. So you've got to get over that. Yeah. So then immediately you shut that down. You're like, no, I live here, bro. You know what I mean?
Especially because you're a white gentleman, and DC is largely black population.
Yeah, that lives there. Yeah. Permanent residents. It wasn't always like that, and that's a whole nother interesting story on why that is. Yeah. I don't know if it's like that more now. I haven't been back home in 11 years. My mother said it's become completely gentrified. It's nothing. I wouldn't recognize it. So really, it wouldn't surprise me if that's a lot different, than it was. I mean, than the bulk of my life. I lived there for 33 years. I moved here 2 months before my 34th birthday. The 6 months prior to that, I lived in St. Lucia, which is the farthest easternmost island in the Caribbean. It's an hour ahead of Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty much kind of out in the Atlantic,
It's one of the first places to get hit by any sort of hurricane coming through.
Yeah, although I didn't experience it when I was there, but I wasn't there really. My contract ran out before really the monsoon season started. Like the hurricane season is more like here, like the later part of the summer. So I was there from about January to June in 2008. Which is hilarious. I mean, there's 150,000 people that live out in that country. So it's just small. And so, so I was a teacher at the St. Lucian Academy of Music, which is just a kind of a small little building, looks like a rec center. You know what I mean? Like it's got a fancy name. But myself and the I'm doing air quotes like a dork, the principal, it was just another drinking buddy of mine. Like would have to go around
drinking that Caribbean rum, huh?
We'd never get my hands on. Like, so you know what I mean? Like, so, but we'd have to go around up all the kids, like in the city, the little town was on the top of the hill in the one city, Castries, which is the capital, which is looks. I mean, if you could call it a city, I mean, but we have to go find the students. There was only like 20 kids, and we just have to go track them down. Really? Okay, well, where's this guy? Okay, he's over there playing. Okay, well, no, let's go. You guys want to play music today? And it's island time, dude. I would show up at like 11. We'd round them up by 12:30. We play for 2 hours. Then we go screw around for the rest of the day. You know what I mean? It's like, they don't even have addresses there. Like if you order pizza, you just describe where your house is. It's hilarious. It's so little because there's 150,000 people. Half of them live on a tiny little tip of the northern part of the island, and the other half live on the southern tip, and in between is a rainforest. So everyone knows each other. It's like, and it's okay there's only one road that's paved, and that's the highway that circles the entire island. Did I knock? That's okay. I think it's okay.
Yeah,
But, and it's only one lane. It's 2 lanes, one each way. And it's okay to just stop your car if you see your friend going the other way and talk to him for a while. That's fine. And when they're done, traffic resumes. You know what I mean? It's not, most people don't even have cars. It's just another thing too. It's societal laws. It's drinking and driving is not illegal there because there's not ever enough people driving to really hurt anybody but themselves. People die all the time from drinking and driving, but it's the kids that race their supercar. There's no restrictions on what you can do to your car either.
Damn.
I had one of these. I had a Honda Civic that had a supercharger in it that went 185 miles an hour, and I could do that whenever I felt like it.
What?
You know what I mean? Yes, you can just go. There's no speed limit. They sell beer right at the counter at the gas stations. You know what I mean? So I'd be drinking a couple beers, driving about 140 miles an hour. You know what I mean? Just because I could. Because there's no one there, and then you just slow down when there's someone. You know, it's just you couldn't do that here. There's just too many people on the road. I mean, it's just interesting. Like, anyway, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but let me just maybe talk about just a brief history, just so people kind of know who I am and a little bit. Like, I did grow up in Washington, D.C. Moved here when I was 33. Wasn't really happy there for a number of reasons for the last couple of years. You know, just mostly, weather. I just really started getting really tired of the cold. Never really could tolerate it that well. You know, and it always bothered me. I always was just miserable. It's so funny that what is it? Seasonal affective disorder. It's the acronym is SAD. That always what cracked me up. Anyway, so but I think it's more has to do with my people. You know, I don't know if you could tell this about me, but I'm of primarily Roman Catholic descent, Irish.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and I think that they should amend that ethnic designation to be, Irish Catholic alcoholic is really what it is. Northern European people are some of the biggest alcoholics on the planet.
For sure.
Yeah, just that. It's Jury where they come from. It's always cold and it's always raining. You know what I mean? And it sucks all the time. You know what I mean? It's like if it sucked where you were all the time, you want to drink too. You know what I mean? So, my family is too. Again, it would be easier to tell you the people that weren't addicts or alcoholics than were. The people that are still alive. The people that live past early 60s stop. You know what I mean? In my family, the people that don't die, are young, real young. Yeah. Some of them,
catches up.
Yeah, and so that's just the way it is. My mom is one of the few that's not. Like it skipped her. You know what I mean? It's both sides of the family too. But my mom's side of the family is just nothing but drunks. My father's side of the family, nothing but drunks. And I don't say that in a negative way. These people are very nice people that
they just drink. They
became alcoholics, and most of them don't anymore. And again, the ones that didn't stop are no longer with us. Yeah. One way or another, they stop. You know what I mean? Eventually.
They punched their card.
Yeah, and my father did. My father stopped when he was 35. Hasn't had anything. My dad's 70 now. He doesn't take a single medication for anything. He's healthier than I am, Wow. Briefly, just wanted to kind of finish I don't mean to digress the conversation too long, but I do want to say that thing that if we're going to ask for a pass, this is what got me started thinking about alcoholism and recovery. And if we're going to ask for a pass for our negatives and the mistakes that we made, and we're going to ask for understanding for the things that we do poorly, and we're going to ask for forgiveness, then it's got to work the other way too. If our mistakes aren't entirely our fault, then our successes aren't entirely to do to our industry either. Yeah. Equally. And I know this for a fact. I was taught this when I was a kid. I had tremendous music teachers when I was a kid. I'm extremely fortunate. My father and mother are both of them incredibly intelligent people and well-educated people. And so I never lacked for information ever in my life. I was taught at a very young age how to think critically and logically in a nice way, and in a very loving way, and was put with 2 music teachers that were incredibly gifted people, just who I spent maybe a tenth of my time with them. I mean, I studied with both of them for well over a decade, and I spent maybe a tenth of the time actually talking about music. They taught me how to be a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
How to
that's
do
huge.
this. You know what I mean? How to be a person. You can't have enough teachers in life that can teach you that. And a good teacher, the things that they teach you will last forever. You know what I mean? I will never forget the things that Victor was my upright bass, more of a technician. He was a Soviet defector. He still lives. He's still alive. And then Paul Wingo I studied music theory, music law, music analysis, and ear training. We never touched instruments.
Music law, like in reference to like the music business?
No, music law is in the reference is that there is music theory in science, and then there's music law just as much as there is in science, and that people don't understand that. We'll get to that real soon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'd like to just get to that in a moment here.
Yeah.
But, so there's things that both of them and my father and people that taught my mother, things that people taught me when I was 12, 11, 13, 14, 15, things they said to me that I still understand to this day fully, even more so than I did. And they knew that. They knew that I wouldn't grasp a lot of the stuff. But you're planting a seed.
Then, but
then.
Yeah.
And but they were very adamant about that. And that's when I started noticing that the really, truly great musicians, just like the great anythings, are the people that are humble because they know that the only thing they do is practice. Yeah. That's the only thing that I did. If people think that I do this well, whether I teach or I perform or I play music well, the only part I had to do with it is I just liked it. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Liked it enough to put in the time.
Which was not... I put in a tremendous amount of time, but I really, looking back at it, don't think I really needed to be honest with you. I just never did anything else. You know what I mean? Yeah. You don't have to do that to be really good. You know what I mean? Or to be good. You don't really have to take a lot of time. I just would rather have done that. You know what I mean? But so there was a very real sense that we're no more than just a third of the process. The other people that you play with are just as much to do with your successes as you, and also the people that are listening are inspiring you because they want to be entertained and you want to entertain them. They don't want to see you play poorly. They don't want to see you be nervous. You know what I mean? And so at best, and I don't even think it's this much, but at best, I'm a third responsible for my successes. At best. You know what I mean? And I don't even think that much. You know what I mean? So, and so just kind of starting with that's the way I feel about things, then it leads you to humility. And I learned it, and I started seeing this. My father is a musician. And, my earliest memories are going to his rehearsals just because it was just so my mom didn't have to watch me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, and my sister, I don't even know if my sister even remembers this. Some of this stuff when we first started going there. And my sister and I would just stay in the living room. And this is, there were dude houses. My dad was young. My mom was 21 when I was born, and my father was 24. So when I was 4 and going to his rehearsals, he was a young man, younger than you, 28.
Yeah.
Almost 20 years younger than I am now. You know what I mean? And so his buddies were 21. I mean, so my sister and I would essentially just hang upstairs and read Penthouse magazine and have no idea what we were looking at until it was time for my dad to finish playing music and we listen and play music.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I was able to hold a guitar, then they let me come and turn down real low and just play along. You know what I mean? Like, cause I don't remember really learning some basic stuff on guitar. I just, you know what I mean? I just kind of like, I love my dad so much.
You're mimicking it.
Yeah. You know what I mean? I doesn't mean I did it well, but you know what I mean? There's certain things I could, so I developed ability at a very young age to kind of finger read, so to speak. You know what I mean? I could see people's hands and I could mimic what they did. You know what I mean? That's all of my early learning was really just copying. We'd go to, DC's a place where there's music at every restaurant pretty much every night of the week. It's just part of the culture. So I would just watch the musicians and I would go home and replicate as best as I could what I'd seen that night. And, that was my introduction to music. And then my teachers, like I said, Paul, I studied with him for, I said, well over a decade. The only time I ever saw him touch an instrument was if I played a gig with him or went to go see him play a gig. So I studied with a music teacher. Neither of us ever touched instruments. It was completely in the spiritual, analytical, logical, scientific world of music. We did analysis. We studied film scores, sheet music, symphonies. I'd have to go through an entire symphony, analyze every single note, what it was, describe it, categorize it, key changes, the time changes.
Wow.
Ear training had tapes and tapes and tapes of intervals. And so you just play intervals. I'd have to pick out like, dun, 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 that's perfect fifth, like, dun, dun, octave. You know what I mean? Like,
did you find joy in doing that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. This is another thing. I don't really have fun doing something unless I go nuts all out on it. Yeah. And the other things, I haven't only done music in my life. I've gotten other activities. I rode motorcycles for years. Mm-hmm. And, used to love target shooting. You know what I mean? Like, okay. Marksmanship. Yeah, good at it. My maternal grandfather was a career FBI agent. And so my mom, I don't think that you know this at all, but I've been shooting guns since I was about 5 years old with granddad. So I don't think he ever told her, ever. Yeah. I don't think she thinks that ever happened. But because my mom's, a hippie. My parents are that age. You know what I mean? Yeah. But at any rate, I guess he thought that it was important. Right? That I at least know how to shoot at a mountain. I mean, we didn't shoot anything. We were in North Carolina.
I think it's important to get kids familiar with what it is, not just say don't do it and never touch it and don't look at it.
Oh yeah,
you create that curiosity.
Sure. And I wasn't carrying guns at 5.
No,
I was under his supervision. You know what I mean? Like, and but sorry to keep hitting the mic here, but so this just some kind of premises. I think if you really want to have it, if anyone's really interested in the way I think or what I feel or at all in any way, I think that it's important to kind of establish just some basic premises or basic truths or starting points of where I kind of what I consider when I'm coming up with an opinion or way that I feel about the things that I think about.
And I mean, beautiful for you to preface it that way too, because I don't think enough people put emphasis on why they believe what they do or how they come to that conclusion. They just, this is how I feel and blah, here you go. And they don't actually analyze the points that allow them to make that final judgment in that point in time. So maybe people listening to this that don't take the time to do that will kind of sit back and maybe analyze their own thoughts on why they, act or go about their life in the way they do.
Sure. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I think opinion, I think that's I'll respect, even if I disagree, like in a way that I never thought that I could with someone. I'll respect an opinion always if I can tell that they put some effort into it. Mm-hmm. They don't have to study for years on it. Mm-hmm. But just because it makes sense to me is not good enough for me. Do you know what I mean? If you tell me something, you feel a certain way about something because it's just whatever happens to make the most sense to you, then I'm not going to correct you at all or think any less of you, but I absolutely will not talk to you about that at all. Like if you start talking to me, I'll just listen to you, but that's not going to be something that you and I are, that's not going to be a reciprocal conversation, yes. Or a conversation that's reciprocated. I'm just going to be listening to your ignorant opinion.
You're along for the ride at that point.
Yeah. And I'm just, okay, so, and that happens. I mean, we're not going to agree with everyone in life. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Especially now. I mean, just, without naming names, our country's bitterly divided over a couple people that I can think of right now. Right.
For sure.
And so, but, I know people that are on both sides. And I know both people that are on both sides for reasons that I don't think are... Let me put this in a better way. It's not for me to say what someone's opinion should be or shouldn't be at all, or how they come to it. I believe that a person is doing themselves a favor or doing themselves a service by researching or not researching an opinion. You know what I mean? That's a preference that I have. I like to have an informed opinion. So for me, if I'm going to have an opinion, I'm going to learn as much as I can before I come to my conclusion. And that's not set in stone. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because I think that's also wrong. I think that my father told me this a long time ago, that the most dangerous person on the planet is the person that is 100% sure they're right. And I think that if you're a critically thinking person, you're constantly looking for reasons why you're wrong. Yeah. Because it's okay. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. In fact, the best thing that can happen to you is to be wrong about something, because if you're corrected, your knowledge is increased and you're no longer making mistakes and your life is better and it's more efficient. So, if someone's a Trump supporter, I personally am not. I don't hate Donald Trump at all. I don't hate anybody. And I don't think that he, this is, I don't care if I get in trouble over this. I really don't think he believes a lot of his garbage. I think, you know what I mean? I think he's an entertainer. He knows how to play to his
opportunist.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do I play this?
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. The issue why it's just as insidious is because the effect on the populace is the same. Whether Donald Trump believes what he says or not is irrelevant, because the damage that is caused by making it okay to voice opinions that should not be okay to voice. And I don't believe in censorship, but these are ignorant opinions. Again, these are not researched opinions.
Yeah, so if there is a knock against him is the fact that you are in this political seat, which holds an incredible amount of weight, and you're still behaving in that way. And I think that's what a lot of people's complaints would be. But some people are just hating him to hate him.
Yeah, and I agree. And I you know, I didn't, you know, however, I knew that I didn't. I told my father, it's funny, like I'll get to this kind of trio with my father and my sister and I, and we do different things. We're pretty much the same people, but tiny little differences, and it works out perfectly. And so I remember telling my father that, you know, honestly, this is probably ultimately going to be for the best, because political correctness started. You won't remember this one. You know, political correctness really started in the early 90s. The politically correct movement, the PC movement of making it uncool to say certain things. And I think that it was necessary. It was absolutely 100% necessary at the time. Things have changed so much in my lifetime. I don't consider myself an old person, but I've lived for almost half a century, and a lot has changed. When I was a kid, it was okay. It wasn't a hate crime. There was no such thing as a hate crime. There were just crimes. But there is a more serious, sinister aspect to a hate crime than there is simply beating up someone to steal their money is different than beating up someone because they're a homosexual and stealing their money. Yeah. There's an added level of malice there that deserves to be recognized legally. You know what I mean? That's not asking for additional rights. You know what I mean? That's another thing that people confuse. Equal rights does not mean additional. And that's another, remind me of that. That's a fundamental way that we're taught about this country when we're born. And that's a lot of this, but that's later. I'm going to get ahead of myself. Where was I before I changed? So
well, we were talking about hate crime and that.
Even before that. Okay, so in my life, political correctness.
Political correctness, yeah.
Okay, necessary, because you can't go around calling people faggot. I'm sorry to say that. Mm-hmm. And I'm quoting. And I hope people listening don't think of me as a bigot. I don't think of myself as one. And I never would say that to someone in any kind of malice or anger. But if I were to say the F word, you're going to know what I'm talking about just as much as I were to say the N word. You might as well say it. If you're going to say the N word, everyone knows what word you're referring to. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So in this context, I'm not going to even test that theory out. Not even going to go there. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, if I say something that might sound offensive, it really isn't intended to, and I apologize beforehand, and it's simply kind of quoting, or maybe to make a point. Yes. But that was entirely okay. Not just with amongst young boys in a locker room when I was a kid. Anywhere you could say the FAGGOT word with impunity anywhere that you could say anything. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That was not considered a bad word. You could be on an airplane. You could be in a restaurant. I can't tell you, my whole life. You know what I mean? Up until I was a teenager, almost 18 years old. Before that was not okay, and it took years for that to just kick in. And kind so
filter through. Yeah.
Now. So we needed to stop a gaping wound at the time, right? And how we treated people and how people deserved to be treated. So, so we put a gigantic Band-Aid on it. That was political correctness, but it didn't solve the problem. Yeah. It made it livable for people. So what I told my father, I knew what I thought. Okay, this Donald Trump. I think one of the unintended probably benefits of this is that maybe we'll actually really start to tackle the problem. And we have. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Political correctness is not the answer. It's only to just get us to even be able to relate to each other and stop criticizing and insulting each other. Yeah. Like the football team that I grew up loving, I'm from Washington, D.C., finally changed their racist-ass name after almost 50 years. 1972 was the first time that name was protested. And then 1982, the first time the Redskins, in my lifetime, if you're not a football fan, there's a thing called the Super Bowl that decides the champion of the league of the world, which is weird because it only occurs in this country. So, but anyway, so Redskins were the champions of the world, or the Washington football team now is what they're called. It's funny. I've wanted them to change that name for so long, and they finally have. I can't stop calling them the goddamn Redskins. Sorry to cuss. So anyway, but, you know, I, in a sense, I was a supporter of that. Complicit. I didn't know Redskins was bad until in 1982. I was 8 years old. The Redskins went to the Super Bowl, and there was massive protests. I'm like, what's this all about? I'm like, oh, that's offensive? I didn't know that. I've got Redskins shirts on. I got hats. Go to Redskin games, watch them on TV, Washington football team games, watch them on TV. It was Joe Theismann, the quarterback, was my hero. In fact, I met him one time, and I take a small little bit of credit for their Super Bowl victory in 82 because in 1981, real brief, I'll make this quick. This absolutely happened. You don't believe me? I will provide you with my father's contact information because he's standing right behind me rolling his eyes. Joe Theismann, quarterback of the Washington Redskins, was a decent player at the time. The prior year, 1981, the Redskins finished 500. They won as many games as they lost. In my 7-year-old brain, that meant that they were average. If you win as much as you lose, you're average. Yeah. So here's my big opportunity to meet my football hero, Joe Theismann. I've got number 7 jerseys at home, drew pictures of him all the time. I would sit in front of the TV and watch football and draw little cartoon scenes of what was going on. Joe Theismann throwing a pass to Art Monk.
Wow.
Yeah, and, you know, and that's what I did when I was a kid. And my dad would drink beer with his friends. Well, I'd do that. And I'd sit in front of the TV and play. I'd either play with Star Wars guys or I'd start drawing. So here's my big chance. I get up to him and I'm like, he's like, hi, what's your name? I'm like, John. I'm looking at him like starry-eyed. This is Joe Theismann right in front of me, right?
Yeah.
And I said, you know, the Redskins were average this year. And he goes, he looks so pissed. He goes, he finished signing my name as fast as he could, put a big point on it, and slammed the pen down on the page, slid the picture over to me and said, you know what, kid? The Redskins are going to be better than average next year. You know what I mean? And they were. They won the Super Bowl. And I know that egotistical person, because as I got older, I understood what kind of a egotistical person he is, which a lot of successful guys are. You know, I think that kind of goes to territory. You want to be successful in a world like that, you got to think the sun rises and sets you know where, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So looking back, I know he was in training camp, that little red-headed idiot. I'm going to prove to I'm not going to take that from an idiot like that. You know, and like some little 7-year-old redheaded stepchild, I'm going to dominate this league. And they did. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's silly. Sorry to go off on that. That's a funny story that cracks me up to this day. But if Joe Theismann hears this, you're welcome. So like,
you hear that?
So like, but so the political correctness. So you know, to kind of get back, you know, like I told my father, because that's the first person I talk to when anything interesting happens on Earth, is you know, I think this is actually going to actually maybe fix it. It might take a little while, but now it's out on the table again, and we're going to see.
The ugly truth is out.
Yeah. All these people now, oh, it's okay to be like this again? This is great. I haven't been able to do this in 30 years. You know what I mean? I've been able to openly hate everyone who's different from me. And the reasons it's so, if you'd like to get into that, we could, if you'd like. Those are so complex. You know what I mean? It's fascinating. You know what I mean? And I guess maybe start with this. I've always been interested in taking care of all of their variables, right? Let's take a couple examples of things, okay? Let's take music, because that's been one of the, you know, central themes of my life, right? And what makes good music. And we're getting into music law versus music theory versus psychology and things like that. If you take care of everything that you can when you're writing a piece of music, meaning that fundamentally things are sound, you don't have weird sounding notes, you don't have weird clashes, the rhythm's good, it's tight, then the only reason someone cannot like that song is their own subjective opinion. If there's no objective reason why a song is bad, then you take care of everything that you can. And the only reason why they don't like it is because they don't like you for some reason. They don't like your guitar sound, or they don't like your drummer's sound, or they don't like your voice. You can't control that, but what you can control is making sure that your melodies are good. And a lot of that stuff is actually, I don't really want to say subliminal, but the reasons what makes good music is all science. And if you understand that, you can essentially, people will like your music without even understanding why. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. At all. You know what I mean? Just like another suggestion to even a lot of guys that work at the store, if you guys did one little thing, all of you would have an easier job today and make more money. And if you want me to, I'll tell you now, or we could talk about that later.
What is it? I got to know.
Everyone in that store, and we all do this as a society with slang. It's a tiny, tiny little thing, and you're going to think I'm a nitpicker, and you're going to think I'm old and stupid for thinking like this. But believe me, when I first was taught this, and I was taught this too, nothing that I'm telling you or anyone else is. I shouldn't say nothing, but the seeds were planted by someone else. I can't take credit for this, right? I learned when I started working for FedEx in a corporate environment that you never demand something from a customer in any way. And demanding from a customer with the connotation normally that would carry is an aggressive demand. But it's not. If you're on the phone with a customer and you need to put them on hold, and you say, I'm going to put you on, or give me a sec, any of these slangs, you're commanding that customer. You're telling them what to do. If you ask them, will you allow me a moment to put you on hold, and I'll go check on that. It's a tiny little thing. It takes no more effort to do that, and you are being respectful. And they won't even realize if they're young. If they're young, they'll think it's cool that you're treating them nice. If they're my age, they might not even realize it. If they're old, they're going to think, "Oh, this guy's old-fashioned. I'm spending more money here. This is a guy that knows how to treat." I'm serious, Juan.
Makes
just
sense.
every little. Give me a sec.
Hospitality.
Give me a sec as a command. Hold on as a command. You don't command customers, especially when you're a commissioned employee, because you work for Guitar Center, but you work for the customer for the duration that you're with that customer. You're a subcontractor. I would say that there's an implied actual legal contract, but if anything else, if at minimum there's an applied social contract that when someone goes to a store and you work there, the social contract is you help them, they make a decision. If they want something, they give you money, right? Okay, so you working for them, Juan, you know what I mean, as a commissioned employee, just as much as you're working for Guitar, you're working for them more than you're working for Guitar Center for the time that you're with them, even though it's temporary. You're temporarily a subcontractor, and your client is Joe Schmo that wants to buy a guitar. Yeah. Right? So if you start telling him what to do, like that, you here's the thing: you can still tell them everything you want to tell them, and you can make them do whatever you want without telling them what to do, without them realizing it. It's easy. People are easy. You know that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But again, just think about how many times a day you tell a customer what to do.
Yeah, I'm looking back, and right out the gate, I always say, let me do this, let me do that.
It's not their job to let you do anything.
Yeah. I always say that. I was like, let me check the warehouse, or let me put you on hold.
If you allow me to check, will you allow me a moment to check the warehouse?
I think that's big, man.
It's huge. It's huge, dude, and it happens. It's because that's how we talk. I'm not criticizing the way we talk. However, and most customers wouldn't be offended by that. I'm just saying that you will have a better relationship. It'll be easier for you to do everything else. That tiny little thing, and to me, that's so dumb. That's like if you told me that instead of wearing black boots, if I wore red boots, I would make $100 more a month. I would wear red boots, man.
If you're a waitress, I can see that red heels. But when you initially said that, what I think about, my mind automatically goes to my 5-year-old son. Like if I tell him to do something, he has a harder time doing it. But if I give him 2 options, or if I phrase it in a way where it's this is what I intend to happen, one of these 2 outcomes, but it's your decision to make that happen. My mind went exactly to that. I'm gonna have an easier time with him if I present him with an option with 2 outcomes that I desire.
Exactly, and that actually is a fundamental principle of Hegelian dialectics, which is Georg Hegel was an early 19th century German philosopher that just that, right? That broke down the resolution to an issue in 3 stages, and this is a very
give it to me.
Well, you're right. Briefly, you should run the country, Juan, because if you understand the principle that you give people 2 options and that are going to lead to what you want anyway, then you control everything. And that's what we do. Like Chris Rock said, we've got plenty of choices in the country. They're stupid choices. Like, do you want that supersized? We don't really have any good choices, but we've got tons of choices. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Do you want to be a fat ass, or do you want to exercise, or do you want to be like me and do nothing, like, and just be who you are, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so funny. People, I'm told now. Please tell me if I'm starting to look my age. I'm told that I don't look 46. Oftentimes, most people don't guess that, and they say, "Well, what's your secret?" Real easy. be an alcoholic for 25 years, smoke cigarettes, eat whatever the hell you want, and never exercise. You know what I mean? Like that you know, that's all I've done.
Yeah. You won the genetic lottery, sir.
I guess, you know, but so excuse me, everybody. Let me just look this. I just want to make sure that I want to get the this is interesting. Just if anybody cares, if I look something up real quick, it's just because I don't want some Nimrod arguing with me about a date. You know what I mean? That's unimportant, because I'm, at the end of the day, I'm not a professional philosopher. It's something that is interesting to me, but
Recreational philosopher.
I just want to look up the dates here. I just want to make sure I've got the timeline right.
Well, what would timeline matter other than somebody being nitpicky about you naming the wrong timeline?
Because it relates to history and the evolution of how people think.
Okay.
And so if again, how would it not matter?
No, I wanted you to present it. So if somebody's like, why is he bothering looking at it?
You play? I know that trick, dude.
What's that?
I'm not going to tell my tricks.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you start something and I don't know. I'm going to ask you, how do you feel about that? And then all I'm going to do is listen to what it is. I'm going to let you explain it to me, and then I'm going to just add some little bullshit wrinkle on top of it, make you think I'm smarter than you.
No. Is that what I was doing?
I'm just suspect. I'm from DC. I'm suspicious of everybody, bro.
You should be super sus.
My grandfather's an FBI agent, so everyone's under suspicion with me. No, I'm just teasing, bro. I just wanted to look this up real quick.
No, now I'm thinking, was I subconsciously like, hey,
you probably
elaborate
were.
it for me?
Yeah.
And then when you asked me, I was like, oh no, so everybody else can know.
Just want to look at when Georg Heigl came up with this. Let me look him. The concept is old, but it's spelled George Heigl. It's
spelled George instead of what? What was his first name again?
He pronounces it Georg, but it is a German philosopher. And with the Hegelian dialectics, anyway, it's I can't do this at the same time. I just want to. Sorry about that.
You're fine.
Again, if someone, I guess for me, it would be. You asked why is it important to know when that happened.
Well, I would just say maybe because there was a big historical context to like that being in the zeitgeist of like that generation of whenever he kind of brought that idea to fruition.
Absolutely, it is. And also too, the timeline just for the Earth, like let's say like this. Let's say that Georg Heigl had lived 5,000 years ago and came up with this. That would make things different, right? Things tend to happen. Like it would be weird if we had a space shuttle in the year 2 BC, right?
Yeah.
But nothing else was. You know what I'm saying? Like to me, it just makes sense. So. Sorry, let me just oh gosh.
I need to get my own researcher on board here. Is what you're telling me right now, John Palmer.
Yeah, just if anybody really, you never know, dude. I mean, as an educator, you might say something that makes someone. This might be someone's passion for the rest of their life, like studying philosophy. So that's, I mean, you got a responsibility. You know what I mean?
There is a big responsibility. Yeah,
yeah, like it's so.
There is, because at the end of the day, we're just having a regular conversation, but I'm choosing to record it, film it, and putting it up online. So there would be, I guess, a little bit more of responsibility on our behalf to make sure we do come correct.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. And I wouldn't do that for my students. And so, where is this?
So is it very... Not so well known. Is that why we're having trouble?
Yeah, it's I can't believe I'm just
that's even better. So how do you pull that out? How do you reference that when it's like, unless you're using Bing, are you using Bing instead of Google?
No, I'm just, why is this not? One more thing. Okay,
yeah.
just
You're good. If you don't find it, what we could do is you can text me later the years, and then I can always throw it under the video.
Oh, here it is. It's the first thing. Sorry.
It's all right. John is showing his age.
I just want to
Googling skills.
use there. It's basically because he uses a very specific term. Like there's a thesis, the thesis, the antithesis, and I forgot the third one. One more. 3. And This is going to drive me nuts. I can't believe this is taking this long. I normally can pull up this stuff in my sleep.
When you're having a conversation with the lady and she don't believe you. That's good.
Yeah. Synthesis. That's the one. I'm sorry that took so long, everyone.
Synthesis.
So here.
Thesis?
So thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, right? So Georg Hegel basically felt that all conflict and all conflict resolution could be broken down into 3 stages, right? So the thesis is the event, is what happens. The antithesis is the reaction. The synthesis is what you do about it, right?
Yeah.
So if you can control any one of those things, then you can control the outcome. And that's the Hegelian dialectics is the basis for all conspiracy theories. Because the thinking is this, right? So the thesis is the event. The antithesis is the reaction. The synthesis is what comes of it. You know, how you either solve of it or the result of it, right? So let's take one that's popular. Let's take September 11th in 2001, right? So the event is the attack, right? That's the thesis. The antithesis of that, the opposite of that, in Georg Hegel's opinion, is the reaction to that. As us as a people, we reacting. So we haven't solved the problem yet. All we have is an event and a reaction to it, right? The synthesis is what comes of it. What is the lasting impact? What is the change? What is the result of the action combined with our reaction to it will lead to some kind of result, right? You can boil any conflict, any debate, any difference of opinion, anything down to those 3 principles, those 3 stages. That's all you need. And there's another unique thing about 3 too that I'd like to get to at some point. It's a magic number in everything as far as stability is concerned and problem solving and logic. But we'll get to that in a moment later. So the thinking goes, and this is what you did with your son, and which why I think you'd be a good candidate to run the world, is that
Oh no.
if you you don't have to cause the thesis, you don't have to cause the event, but if you can, that's preferable, right? But you don't have to. This can happen with an organically happening event, like a tidal wave. That's just something that happens. Let's say there's a tidal wave and infrastructure gets wiped out in the Gulf and they don't have power. That's a naturally occurring event.
Or a novel coronavirus.
Yeah. Now that's a naturally occurring event. You can still achieve a result that you want from something that's organic or manufactured. A manufactured event would be something like when Adolf Hitler blew up the Reichstag building and made it look like fascist terrorists to garner support for his party, right? That's not an organic event. That's a manufactured, controlled environment. Now, whether terrorists had set that on fire or Hitler, the thinking is this: if you take the thesis, the event, it's preferable if you control the event, if you start the event. But even if you don't, you can manipulate the antithesis, the reaction to it, to get the synthesis that you want all along. And that's what you did with your son. You presented your son with a thesis. You gave him an option, which is the antithesis, to achieve the synthesis that you wanted all along. You just gave him 2 different ways to do it, but you really didn't give him an option not to do it. Yeah. I'm serious one. And again, this is not unique necessarily to conspiracy theories, but conspiracy theorists have kind of latched onto this principle to kind of explain why their theory is correct.
Why the outcome? Because once you know, or once you see the outcome coming forth, well, then you start working backwards. Well, why would they want it to be this way?
Absolutely. And why would they accept it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like if you now, I sometimes I'll read about conspiracy theories because it's interesting to me, but I would never subscribe to one 100% any more than I would anything else, because we just can't prove it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It could be that. It could be any number of things. Also, there's that old saying: if you can introduce me to 3 people that can keep a secret amongst themselves, then I'll start believing in conspiracy theories.
That's the big one. That's the big one that gets me. It's like you have all these people that somehow manage to keep their mouth shut. Like,
it's not possible.
Not possible.
Do you know what I mean? In fact, I cracked Austin up one time. He didn't know me that well. And I used to write the story, and I was talking about that. Just made that one point. I was like, even if there's going to be some drunk CIA guy hitting on a chick, being like, I helped kill the President Kennedy, right? You want to have sex with me? They're going to slip out somewhere, some way, somehow. It's bound to happen. We're people. we're people. We're not that smart. You know what I mean? We're finite creatures. We're going to die. We don't live long enough to get that smart. I don't think we're meant to be that smart. In fact, I think smart people are anomalies. I really do. You know, they really are. And so, like George Carlin said, just think of the dumbest people you know, Juan, in your life. And just understand that most of the world's not even as smart as those morons. Like, I'm serious. I'm serious. And I'm one of them. Honestly, if you and I were idiots, would we know that?
No.
I'm happy. It wouldn't affect my. I'd still do this.
Who's happier out there than the oblivious or the
exactly.
willful ignorant?
If you know too much about stuff, all you do is get irritated by it.
And anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until you realize you can do nothing about it, then you can just sit back and watch it. And that's kind of where I am right now.
Transcendence.
Yeah, because all of my young ideology is gone. I know I can't change the world. I'm not 21 anymore. When I was 21, I couldn't change the world. I just didn't know that. I just thought I could, because it would be weird if a 21-year-old didn't think they could. You know what I mean? But then you realize that you can't. The world has been the world for way a long time, dude. Yeah. And so, but again, non-conspiracy theory, conspiracy theories notwithstanding, because I don't even want to mention the term really anymore. But just that principle of manipulation is what societies have been doing since there have been societies. Like that, this has always happened, Juan. This is always, everything that happens now has always happened. It's a cycle. It reoccurs. And that's what I was telling you. Things get better for the common people for about a couple generations. And then those people die off and things get crap again. And people forget. Nobody remembers. If you don't study history, it's all these cliches. I don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy man right now, but everything that's happened has already happened in some ways. Yeah. Every great thing that happens is going to happen again. Karl Marx said everything that happens is going to happen again, and it's a tragedy that it has to happen again. That's a different kind of take on that. But no, that's an absolute truth. There's nothing that is happening today that hasn't happened over and over and over and over and over and over throughout the last 5,500 years, since we really had the first written down set of codified laws, what people point to as the first modern society, with a very, 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 very detailed set of laws and punishments called the Code of Hammurabi, right? King Hammurabi was king of ancient Sumer, which is modern-day Iraq, right? That civilization is about 5,500 years old that we know of. But the Code of Hammurabi, he commit to tablet, I think, about 3,500 years ago. Again, if you're a nerd out there, I might be off on the time. I'm not a professional, Sumerian historian here. This is stuff that's amateur fun for me.
Hey, go light on my boy, all right?
Yeah, so
easy.
And also, but I encourage you to reach. Who am I? You know what I mean? Again, who am I? These are things that I've read. You don't know that I might have misunderstood everything that I read. So I encourage anyone out there that's interested in any of this stuff to do your own research, and it's more fun to do that anyway.
Yes. Yep.
So, as far as the problems that we have and the things that happen, these things, like these regressive types, I think are very ignorant of how the world has always worked. You know what I mean? And you can't ever go, even though the same types of things have always happened, they've happened in a macro sense, not the specifics have been different. And that's why maybe people get confused. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but the same methods, in fact, are like, I mentioned this to you just a few weeks ago, that, these people that make America great again, people, what's so absurd about that is that there's a couple things kind of absurd about that, but that period that they're referring to was an anomaly. There was nothing to really, that was something that was virtually unprecedented in all of human history, in every culture. There's never been a society that had a gigantic middle class like we did in this country for roughly 25 years. You know what I mean? So that's not even, our country is officially 242 years old. So that's not even barely 10% of our own history, much less the world's history.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Where that's happened. All of the times through history, and including now, it's like it is. A few people control the majority of wealth, and everyone else just gets by. You know what I mean? That's the way it's been. You know what I mean? And we get by now so much better than we did even 90-something years ago. You know what I mean? Like we didn't have child labor laws. We didn't have a work week. There was no unions. You know what I mean? People, you think you have it rough. because you have to work a couple overtime. Not you personally, but like when I worked for FedEx and people would complain because we had 6-hour work weeks for leading up to Christmas. You think that's bad?
Yeah.
People work 80, 90-hour weeks every week. That's just what you did. And you didn't even make money at some of these places. These old mining factories or mining towns, like these companies that did, like that were notorious for this. You lived everything. They paid you in tokens that were only redeemable at things that the company owned. So your housing was owned by the company you worked for, the stores, all the goods. So you basically it's kind of what I feel like working at Guitar Center, because every dime I make practically goes right back to the company. Although that's by choice. You know what I mean? I do get paid in actual currency. I just choose to use it at there.
Yeah.
But so point being is that the wealth never leaves the company. And people never get any wealthier. They just make a wage to live. They never actually increase their wealth. You know what I mean? Which is the classical definition of income in economics. Income is not the wages that you earn from your job. Income is an accumulation of wealth, is what people refer to, or what is referred to as capital gains, is that money that your wealth is increasing off of something that you own or possess, not the work that you do. When you go to a job and you make a wage, that's not what income used to be defined as. That's why there's two different words for it. A wage is what you get. That's a contract. You go to your job at the specified time and do the job that you're supposed to do, and you get the agreed-upon fee. That's not income. That's a wage. That's a living wage that you're earning. Income is when you increase your wealth. If you sell a house and make a profit, that profit's income. If your stocks go up, that's income. Income is capital gains, not a wage that you earn from a job. And that economic definition started changing with the idea of introducing income tax to the United States around the turn of the century. It took a while. It didn't just happen in 1913. We didn't have a federal income tax or state at all. Yeah. And initially, the intent for the decades leading up to that was not something new. The intent was to tax income, not wages. You know what I mean? Technically, if you go by the definitions of the time and the things that were going on in this country leading up to us having an income tax, and it was never intended to be more than 1% of anyone's wages or income initially. That didn't start jumping until we hit the Great Depression.
In war times, I would imagine.
Yeah, war times, a little bit of that, but more so that, and that's another interesting kind of thing too. So, you could really make a case that income tax for a person that works a job at a wage is really not it's not in the spirit, and it's not necessary. Do you know what I mean? It's not necessary. We have enough. Another thing about me too that I think anyone that's interested in hearing me talk is going to have to realize that there really is, when I talk about things and my opinions, there's what I want with my heart and what I would love to see. And then there's the pragmatic side of me. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes there's a huge difference in what I think we need or should have or really need, or what's possible maybe, what's even workable from what I wish we could have.
Yeah.
Right. And
it's beautiful for you to point that out and to acknowledge that, because I think a lot of people, just find what they wish it was like and demand that be the case. And they base their own personal beliefs on those thoughts and those opinions. And so they get tied to their feelings. And so that's why when you attack somebody's idea, or not attack, but just criticize or point out, well, have you looked at it this way? Like they take it as a personal attack.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just that's antithetical to the goal. The goal is to get along and to talk, you know what I mean? And not to win, you know what I mean? It's if you win, what's the point of winning if you don't, if you're no better off? You've just won something, you know what I mean? Like it's that there's nothing to gain there, you know what I mean?
I had that thought the other day with an argument I had with someone. I'm like, well, do you want to win or do you want to be happy?
Yeah.
Because you can win all day and just be completely miserable because, look, you're right. But then nobody wants to be around you. Nobody wants to live, with that looming over them, Yeah. It's like you got to find, no matter how right you might be, you do have to find some common ground.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And funny, it reminds me of when I was a young man, 18, 19, 21, like I've never been like what do they call it? A cad. You ever heard that term? Like a Rolling Stone?
Okay.
A player?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've never been the kind of guy that went out and dated a bunch of chicks. I've never asked for someone's number that wasn't my friend. I've never dated a woman that I wasn't friends with first. I've never gone up to a stranger and been like, can I have your phone number so I can call you and we can eat food? You know what I mean? Like that's never happened to me. So at a very young age, my first wife, we started dating when I was 18. Before that, I had a girlfriend, my first serious girlfriend. We were together. We were friends for a year before we ever got romantic with each other. And same with my wife. In fact, my first wife, we didn't know this till much years later. We actually went to the same daycare center when we were a year old for years and didn't know each other until, till much later in school. But I'd known her since we were 13. And so, where was I going with that? Sorry about that.
Being right.
Oh, yeah.
Being happy.
Okay. And I started noticing with the differences in men and women, and they're not a matter of right or wrong. They're just differences. Mm-hmm. And they're different things. And so if you understand that, there's nothing wrong with, like you hear this a lot. I've always been kind of I've tried to be an observer. I've enjoyed, maybe a better way to put it, I've enjoyed being an observer in my life. And I've always thought about the things. Why are people unsuccessful? Why are they successful at things? It's almost an obsession. It's something that I think about all the time. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into kind of like tautologies, right? And so that's what's obsessed me. I really like tautologies because coming or going, no matter how you do it, and at least in the logic sense, there's two kind of meanings. There's a literary tautology, which is really just a redundancy, which is saying really the same thing 4 or 5 different ways. But in the world of logic, it's an absolute truth, and which means that there's no way to analyze it in a way that you won't achieve the same result. Like gravity, no matter what you do to try to reverse gravity in a conventional way, it's always going to work every second of the day. If you drop something on the floor, no matter if you try to go lower to the floor or higher, like it's going to hit the floor. You know what I mean? Unless you take the floor away. Then it's just going to keep dropping until it hits something else. You know what I mean? Anyway, so coming or going, no matter which way you look at it, there's only one result, right? That's not the case with the way men and women are. You know what I mean? The way that they deal with conflict and resolution and things like that. There's different things that are important to them about the conflict, and there's different things that they fixate on. Mm-hmm. And it's not a right or wrong matter. And I don't think that really the difference between men and women, I don't think any of it's right or wrong. It's just a difference, simply a difference. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a hard thing for people to grasp. You know what I mean? I started kind of understanding that, kind of thinking like that in my early, late teens, early 20s. I'd been with my first, we weren't married yet, but we'd been together for 3 or 4 years, maybe, at the time. And, really analyzing, it started with this, what do I really want? I want to love my girlfriend. You know what I mean? I don't want to fight. You know what I mean? I want to have a happy life. So, so I started losing the battle to win the war, right? Mm-hmm. So just whatever, what I mean? But then I was like, well, no, is it really that? No, maybe it's just that we're different. And I started thinking, okay, well, analyzing my own relationships, right? Like if you and I use this example a lot. Like if something happens and I do something that steps on your toes at work, you'll tell me about it. We have a conflict. Men don't like to be in a state of conflict, so we generally try to get out of it pretty quickly, and we're over it.
That's why guys can get into a fist fight and then hug it out afterwards, for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. You know what I mean? Like, again, that's us, and that's not better or worse, I don't think. Now, women, conflict is a lot less overt, and it's longer, and it's deeper, and it's more emotional. And what women don't mind being in the state of conflict, and what's important to them is not a resolution, really, oftentimes, at all. It's the emotional intent behind the action is what they're more hurt by. Like, how could this woman do this to me? She knows that I'm going through, X things. She knows that I'm having trouble with my kid. She knows this. How could she do this to, you know what I mean? Where I would never even think, if you bumped into me and were like, oh, watch yourself, dude. Like, something like that. I wouldn't think, oh man, why is Juan trying to treat me like that? Does he know like how nice I try to be, and I try to eat toast in the morning and be a good person and give my cat kisses? How could he be so rude to me? You know what I mean?
There's so many layers. That is why women, I would say, are more intelligent than men. Because
emotionally intelligent.
There's more layers to that. More. Whereas us would be like, what the fuck?
Yeah, much more. Now, again, we're speaking generalities. Yes, not all women do this. Not all men do this. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I think It's just the fundamental differences on how we process things and what interests us. You know, I think a lot of times, I really think that's it. Why do we do things? We do things because in some way we're interested in it, right? If we weren't interested in it, if people weren't interested in getting upset, they wouldn't get upset.
Whether you have a genuine interest in it or an interest in the outcome of you being interested in that thing. Because you might do a job you don't want to do, but you're not interested in that job. You're interested in how well it pays.
Sure.
Essentially. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's got to be a reason to do anything, right? Mm-hmm. And so that got me down this whole road, this thought train at that stage in my life anyway, where I just really started kind of applying that to everything. Once I kind of, I don't know, naturally maybe just got tired of that, like the difference between men and women, just thinking how does this apply to everything else?
One thing I wanted to say about that before I lose it is there are differences. And when people think of differences, they think that, well, there must be some sort of inequality between the two. If there's a differences, one might be more right or wrong than the other. And what we're saying is there are differences. They're neither good or bad in this sense. They're just differences on how we see it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm in no way making a value judgment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not, right. I don't think one person's perspective is more valid than another.
Yeah. And we are generalizing, but you will notice that a woman who is career driven will get flack for it. A woman who acts more like a male would, in the sense of being a little bit more demanding
Absolutely.
at work, would take flack for it. You're almost seen as a bitch or bossy if you act in the normal way that a man would do
Absolutely.
it. So we are generalizing, but there are those differences that need to be pointed out. That you will get flack for it, for behaving in the non-traditional way.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And I think that's very, very complex too, because I think a lot of people, I think it's different for people. I think some people are consciously offended at that. Like, how could this woman tell me what to do? And I think people, it's unconscious. I think a lot of people are just unconscious. Now, I just kind of lucked out. I've happened to just have more female managers or bosses in my life than men. You know what I mean? Like I think Austin, I think Guitar Center, like I never had the whole time I worked at FedEx, I never had a male direct supervisor. And when I was a kid, I never did. I washed dishes in restaurants and stuff. There was always a woman owned it. You know what I mean? Like, and so she was so I'd never, and all my teachers were women, you know what I mean? Until I got to college. I don't think I ever had a male teacher.
It was weird. Yeah. I remember my first male teacher was like in 5th grade, and I was like, whoa, this is new. Like, this is different.
Yeah. So I don't, I've always, I shouldn't say always, but for a long time, I've kind of been aware of that. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because my direct supervisor at FedEx is a very intelligent woman, Dolores Flowers Brown. And I thought a fantastic manager, like, honestly. But she was, she had all if she were a male, she would be praised for her management style. She, as far as I could tell, really never played favorites, was very fair and very honest as far as what she expected. And she expected a lot, but she gave a lot herself. I mean, she was the hardest worker there. You know what I mean? Like, so to her, she never asked me to do anything that she wouldn't do herself at all in any way. And she was always very fair, always very caring, always took time to make sure that I knew that I had support from her if I needed it. With anything, not just job related. If things were going on, I could talk to her at any time. But there were a lot of people that had problems with it, because she was very driven. She's ambitious. You know what I mean? Like, she and when you're in a position where you're managing 80 plus people, you just don't have time to put it nicely always. She wasn't ever mean, but just to the point. It's not rude, I wouldn't say. Just say, I just need this done by 11, because she has another 79 people to tell something to. Do you know what I mean? And so, and you're absolutely right. If that was you or I in that position, we'd be decisive. We'd be a leader. We knew how to get things done. Whereas if it's her, it's like, who is this? And also, she's African American. So who is this? Like
sassy black woman.
Yeah. I don't get bossed around by someone like that. No. And there was none of that. She was a communications major in college. very intelligent person, like, again, like there's, I can tell you, and I can be sometimes a judgmental person in some ways, you know what I mean? Like it, not to the point that I let it really become a detriment, but as far as how emotionally involved I'll get with someone, do you know what I mean? I can pretty much figure out quickly, like if person X is going to be someone that I'm just going to be interested in getting to know. It's nothing bad, you know what I mean? It's just but again, if they do things that are things that I just don't enjoy, then I'll be nice to them, and that they're nothing to me necessarily. Yeah, but if I'm going on this much about someone, then I really think that they're a fantastic person. Do you know what I mean? And I know this is a really long-winded way to say I completely agree with you, and I experienced it. I mean, she was a manager. She was my second manager at FedEx. My first one was also a very nice woman that was more like a mom type and wasn't as aggressive, and no one had a problem with her. Do you know what I mean? Everybody loved her. Like, she was just everybody's mom. She was so sweet. And I loved her too. She was like a second mom. I lived out here in Arizona. My mom lives in Washington, D.C. She's the same age as my mom. Yeah. I'm the same age as her oldest son.
Oh, okay.
Bam. Like, the instant I met her, she was like, oh, he reminds me so much. She was just took care of me like a mom when I was out here. And, but not in any way that kind of, like you said, possessed more of what traditional feminine qualities. She was more of a nurturing manager. Still effective. Like her when I was on her team, no one had a bad thing to say about her. Everybody worked very hard. Both ways are effective. But I think that you shouldn't have to be, you shouldn't have to modify your management style to fit what people's ideas of a gender role should be. You know what I mean? Like, Noreen was very comfortable being the motherly type because that was her personality.
That was her personality.
Yeah. Dolores was a little younger, not much, but about 10 years younger than Noreen. Had kids. She was a mother, but her kids were younger. You know what I mean? Slightly younger. So she certainly was a mother. And when I did need something like that, she was comfortable giving me like support, like emotional support. But also, she also knew how to get things done and had her way of doing things.
Well, and I would imagine, like, because I picture my wife, she has young kids, and my wife is very, who we would describe, can rub people the wrong way because she's very direct. And also, I can just see with us having young kids, it's more like go, go, go. Like, let's go, like, get it going. Whereas if you have slightly older kids, then you don't have that pressure of young kids at home kind of, wearing you down in between.
I mean, I can only imagine. I mean, I've never had kids, but I can only imagine. I know the older they get, the less likely they
need you less.
Yeah, they're not gonna, like, when they're little, like they're not that far away from dying really at any time. You know what I mean? They need your help more. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's all you got to do is make sure these little idiots don't die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, and then they get to be teenagers and like, well, if they die, maybe they're doing something really stupid. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not because they don't know better. You know what I mean? I could kind of see that. But funny thing too, the first time I met your wife, I didn't know when we were going to that volleyball, I didn't know people. So I was doing just the normal thing, like, just, hi, how are you? How are you connected to this? Are you, and they would say, oh, I'm, such and such friend or family, or I'm their sister.
I had like 3 or 4 different faction group of friends get together, and this was like right before COVID popped off, so we didn't have those restrictions.
Oh yeah, none of that. And so and then when she wasn't there, when Gabby wasn't there when I showed up, but I'd never met her before, right?
Yeah.
And so it just happened. This is it worked out to be really funny, and just we both kind of joked about it. So I was kind of getting ready to do that. So how are just a typical pleasantry, like how are you connected to all of this? Do you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? And somebody did something funny, like somebody fell in a funny way on the volleyball. It kind of caught my attention. So I was getting ready, it just came out like, who are you? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It just, like, it just came out, like, it just, my attention just got diverted, like, just because I guess someone just did like a backflip funny thing and they were laughing, and it just, again, that at the time was more interesting to look at than your wife. No offense. Do you know what I mean? It's like, she wasn't falling down at that moment. She was just sitting. That's a normal thing that people don't always fall down. People sit often. Yes. So the falling down, I don't think you can really blame me for wanting to look at that more at that moment. Do you know what I mean? Like, and so anyway, she was with that little shaking head. attitude. She's like, I'm Juan's wife. You know what I mean? But kind of joking. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I work with Juan, so that's the same thing. I see him 2 or 3 days a week. So, like, what do you got now? You know what I mean? Like, just joking around with her. You know what I mean? But just at the time, it's just like, just immediately thought she was just a funny person. Like, had a funny sense of humor.
She has a great sense of humor. Yeah. Sailor's mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, no, that was funny, and so just it was just funny. It totally just accidental. Like, I didn't, just. I don't know what I was thinking. I just got, I know I was going to see you today. It just reminded me that that's my first impression of her,
Yeah.
It was just
first
funny.
Impressions are funny, man.
I know.
They are. It's like, it's strange, and they never pan out. Like, I don't know why, like, first impressions have such a big, there are such a big deal, because they never really pan out. It's not like, oh, you're exactly what I thought as soon as I met you. Like, that's not how shit works out.
Yeah, I have a couple. I don't know all the reasons to that, but I do have a couple kind of theories on just a few things too that you probably, one is neither party is really, well, actually, one reason why a first impression, when you meet someone, you're really just presenting the part of yourself or what you want them to think you are anyway. Mm-hmm. So that's one reason that doesn't pan out, and then the person that's getting an impression of you. There's also that thing. Have you ever, like you said, like a first impression, have you seen someone you're just like, oh, that guy looks like a jerk or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I think I had this realization when I was a teenager. Same thing. I met a guy and I just was, oh, this guy's a jerk. And I was like, wait a second, I don't even know this dude. And I was like, why do I think he's a jerk? I'm like, oh, because he looks like a guy that used to pick on me in second grade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of like sometimes our first impressions. If there's something about someone like a mannerism or a feature that can kind of cause you to just have an instant prejudice a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and not in the way that people normally use the term prejudice. Prejudice by itself just means prejudging, right? Mm-hmm. We wouldn't be able to survive Earth if we didn't have inherent prejudice just
for our own initial safety.
Yeah, being prejudiced is what allows us to operate a motor vehicle and not have to learn how to drive every day. You know what I mean? If we had zero prejudice in our life, everything we did all the time would be like we were doing it for the first time, because we would be like, well, I have no idea what this is. It looks like a doorknob, but I can't assume all doorknobs are doorknobs.
Can you imagine?
I know. We'd never do anything.
What are these on the end of my legs?
I know. It's like, oh, sorry. I mean, they look like legs, but I don't want to offend them if they're not really legs. You know what I mean? It's like, what I'm saying? The problem is when, like, look at if your brain's like a computer, right? And so you're initially classifying things that you're perceiving all the time. We do it. We don't even realize we're doing it. It's just so we can understand the world. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like, so the problem is, pretty elementary, is when you can't move things out of the temporary folder into the permanent correct folder. Do you know what I mean? Like, and can't interpret. Like, you can't, uncompress that zip file or whatever. You know what I mean? And make sure, that, just because that guy's got paint on his clothes doesn't mean he's a painter. Do you know what I mean? It's like another example I use my students a lot too. It's funny how like I teach my students the way that I was taught, and once they get over the initial coordination of making a chord and playing, I don't think we hardly spend a tenth of our time together actually talking about music.
Yeah,
I teach people whatever they need to learn. Do you know what I mean? And if they don't have something, because it all relates, Juan. You can't do this. You can't be good at anything, but you can't be good at music if you're a jerk. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. That's something that my teachers told me a long time ago, and I didn't believe them. I don't know if I believed them. I just didn't understand, but I get it now, because you can become a jerk after you're a good musician, but you will not become a good musician being a jerk, because you were expecting yourself on an instrument, and if you're a jerk, you're just going to be a jerk on your instrument. Mm-hmm, no one's going to want to listen to you. It doesn't work. It seems so elementary. What was elementary before that?
The elementary about prejudices?
Oh, yeah. That seems elementary, right? That, like an example like this I use with my students, a lot of stuff is, things like I think they're easy analogies to kind of understand, for someone, particularly, if anybody does listen, I hate to sound so negative. I'm always like negative. It's like, no one cares about me. It's like, maybe my mom might listen to this, Anyway, that's just my own self-loathing, but that has to do with my ethnicity. You know what I mean? Right?
Why?
Well, Roman Catholic alcoholics, they all hate each other, right?
You're always guilty.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I can't help that. You know what I mean? I'm never worthy for anything, you know? So, but just imagine, like, if you were somewhere, we'd have a prejudice, right? Like, if you and I had to go stop at somewhere, again, let's assume that this is not COVID time, right? You know what I mean? And we see one person wearing a suit, male, female, doesn't matter. One person has paint on their clothes and one person that's wearing shorts, right? Well, our initial prejudice will be, okay, well, that's a business guy, a painter, and that guy's coming from the gym, right? The guy in the suit could be going to court, could be facing murder charges.
Yeah.
You know, the guy painting his house could be a judge on his day off. You know what I mean? We don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, that's so basic that, you know, it just, but that's how powerful our belief systems are. When I first entered recovery, it was mentioned to me that one of the hardest things to do is to change or alter your belief system. And think about that. And they use some examples like, if you go through your life and you're positive something is a certain way, even if it's a way a word is spelled, this happens. Has this ever happened to you? You're like, I could have sworn it was spelled this way. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's earth shattering. Your belief system is the core. It allows all this other stuff that we do as people wouldn't work without a belief system of some sort. You know what I mean? So changing that is very scary, and that's one of the most wholesale changes that a person can make about themselves, because our belief system drives everything else.
Yeah.
Other than our basic primal drives, like the need to feed ourselves, like the selfish drives that we have.
Well, I think it would even go further than that, because that's what actually gives you purpose. It are your beliefs.
Yeah.
And purpose, while you might live just by, you know, feeding and being fed and having enough water and all that, but you won't actually live until you feel like you have a purpose.
No, and that's one step up. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's a next. Do you know who Maslow? He's another philosopher, and he came up with this. Imagine a triangle. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is just that. So he referred to the different stages of human existence and living conditions. And he imagined a pyramid, right? In the first level of the pyramid, there's levels of the pyramid, like say 3 or 4 different, not really important how many, but so the ultimate goal is to get to the top of the pyramid. And what's waiting for you at the top of the pyramid is what he referred to as being a highly self-actualized individual, right? Someone that is able to talk like we're talking right now, like work on their own personality, their own psychology, their beliefs, be a better person, right? His point was that the first level of that triangle is just simple survival. That if you've got your shelter and your food taken care of, then you can move on to the next. Then you have time to think about this stuff.
Which is part reason why a lot of the world can't
absolutely philosophize. Yes, you it's hard to do that when you're just running away from bullets. Yeah. They're faster than you. You know what I mean? And honestly, that's another thing where sometimes that woman that I got so mad at the other day, what really bothers me, like sometimes is that at any given time, almost the entire planet is not having a good time. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Just it's just unbelievable to get that upset about things when you don't realize how nice we have it right now. Nothing bad is happening to you or I right now. We're two people that, at least as far as I'm concerned, I really, really, really think that you're a very nice person. You know what I mean? Like,
Thank you. Same.
You know, and there's absolutely nothing bad going on right now to us. Mm-hmm. Most of the world can't say that at all. Everything that pretty much everything that can happen to anybody in the world happens every second of the day that the world is existing. You know what I mean? Like, think about this, right? On average, 1.8 million people die per second on Earth. 4.2 million people are born per second. So in 10 seconds, 18 million people just died. If you count to 10, every time you count to 10, 18 million people on average die. 42 million people are born in the time it takes you to count to 10. So if you think about the numbers and how insignificant, how little our stupid problems are, then getting upset about something that's dumb is just it's ignorant beyond belief to me. Do you know what I mean? It actually does make me a little upset. If I really know this person and I really care about them, I'll point that out to them. If I don't, that's another person that's just someone that's not going to be someone I'm going to be friends with. Do you know what I mean? It's just it's simple as that. Like that's, I mean, you and I are not getting raped right now. Millions of people are getting raped right now. You know what I mean? Like, wait another second, another million just got raped.
All these numbers sound a little high, John Palmer, but I get what you're trying to say.
Look it up, dude. I'm not. I looked up that this morning. Just
You look at you randomly Googling people getting raped.
not raped. Oh, I don't know about that, but no, the death rate is at spot on. On average, yes, 1 million people die per second on Earth, on average every single day. 4.2 million people are born every second of the day on Earth. Every second, every day.
I guess, yeah, when there's 7.1, 7.4
more than that
billion.
now, dude. We're getting it's exponentially greater. We're over 8 billion estimated. We're actually inching more towards 9 billion. Within another 2 or 3 years, we'll go over 9 billion. Yeah. In 1985, that famous Live Aid concert. I don't know if you ever heard about that. Bob Geldof organized a simultaneous concert because of the time difference that went on in London and Philadelphia at the same time to raise famine, for famine relief in Africa. Right? Yeah. There were 2 billion people on the planet in 1985. That was 35 years ago.
What?
And he said, yes. He said we're approaching 2 billion. We can't have half of the population living in hunger. I'm like, 2 billion. We wouldn't have any problems if there were only 2 billion people on the planet right now. Like no, we're rapidly getting to 9 billion one. And so that's what I'm saying. All these numbers. That's why it's exponential. It's not one for one. One person doesn't die and one person's born. Yeah. Many more people. So point being is that if that many people dying every second, then there's that many more people that are bummed about it. You know what I mean? Like even if half of that many people, half of the 1.8 million that die per second are alone, there's still a lot of people that aren't. Mm-hmm. And there's still a lot of people that have lots of friends and family. Someone's life is getting ruined right now. I don't want to talk about this all day and bum everybody out. I'm just saying that there's never a time when you have it worse than anybody else.
So for you to be constantly maybe nihilistic or just always having a bad day or about outlook on it, like it's worse for a lot of other people. Not to diminish anybody's own problems.
No.
Like they're serious to you.
Yeah.
In that moment. But there's a lot of people that do have it worse.
Yeah.
So getting back to the pyramid, so the bottom level.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry about that. Okay. Yeah. So the bottom level is just your basic survival, right? Like you said, and that's how we started talking about around the world. Mm-hmm. If you can get above that, right? If your basic needs are met and you're comfortable, and all of your attention is not simply just spent surviving, right? Like early, like us, like our ancestors. Mm-hmm. 3 million years ago. It was all we could do to just eat every day and not get killed by something. You know what I mean? If we're not worried about that, then we have time to do this. Not only do we have time to do this, but in Maslow's opinion, we don't have an excuse not to. We don't have any reason why we can't work to become a highly self-actualized individual. And that's when you go higher up the pyramid. And that's really it. It's not that complex. Most of these theories, like the theory of relativity, is not complex at all. I'm not saying that to sound like a douche.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm just saying it's really not.
Well, that's one of the first arguments or points you made where like the answer is simple, but
the theory of relativity, we're nowhere near being able to test that.
Yeah.
It just couldn't happen. But I'm just saying it in itself, it's very simple concept. Yeah. It basically says that we experience time relative to how fast things are moving around us. So if we're moving faster than everything else is moving, we're going to experience time differently, right? Mm-hmm. The faster we move, and if things go slower around us, we're going to go backwards in time. Whereas if we move slower, we'll go ahead in time.
So maybe could we draw some sort of line to a person with the fast metabolism looks younger?
Could, yeah. you certainly could. You could also, another kind of, I'd never really considered that. I mean, that you know what I mean? That would make sense. I mean, it would fit, it would, I don't know that Einstein ever really thought about that, but it's not really inconsistent with the theory of relativity because the theory of relativity is just things are relative, right? That's all. He's not saying that if you do this, the theory of relativity just states if we could go fast enough, we could conceivably slow down time. In a sense, we'd be traveling back in time, even though we wouldn't be traveling, time would be moving slower.
Yeah.
So thus, almost by proxy, we'd be going back in time. You know what I mean? Whereas if we were able to go slower than time is moving, then we would go forward in time. So we would experience time slower than time is actually happening. So does that make sense? So it works in reverse. So again, it's a very simple theory in that way. Now we can't do that. There's no way that a human can go slow enough to go ahead in time. It just we couldn't any more than we can go fast enough to go back in time. I mean, traveling faster than the speed of light, that much power. First of all, anything that would go that fast would incinerate immediately in our atmosphere. The only way we could even begin to even test something like that would be in space, and we couldn't. We'd need something as powerful as the sun to power our vehicle. I mean, it's just but that's
that's the next argument or the next stage in the Fermi paradox.
Yeah. So, but hold on a second. But that's again that's really all there is to that kind of hierarchy. You know what I mean? The thinking that is if you and I are able to, then we really don't have an excuse not to. Yeah. And both of us are. Like I'm not just by virtue of the fact that we're both sitting here, right? I'm not trying to stay alive right now. Like you know what I mean? I'm not here because there's a nuclear rain outside where that I'll get radiation poisoning. I'm here because I want to be. You know what I mean? I don't have to forage for food right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's really kind of what the hierarchy of needs kind of refers to, and it makes a lot of sense. It's like, why not? It's almost like you're kind of wasting it, like you got an opportunity. You're right. Most people aren't in a position. It's funny. Like when I talk to my wife and stuff like that, people don't think about this. It's funny how people don't things don't occur to people that most of the planet just doesn't even have time to be depressed. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Depression is a luxury that we have.
Depression is a luxury.
It is, Juan.
Well, and that would be fact considering that a lot of affluent neighborhoods have high abuse of pills and prescription medications and suicide rates.
Sure. So do poor ones. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, look, even the poor people in this country have it better than people in other countries.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like that, they think things get immeasurably worse than a ghetto in the United States.
No, I
mean?
I don't think I was telling this on the podcast, but we used to go buy bricks for my dad to make additions to the house from a family in Mexico. This dude would make bricks, and he had a roofless house. And he was making bricks for everybody else to come and buy just to feed. Yeah. I mean, they had walls, but literally no roof.
In St. Lucia, if you want a house, you just go walk into the woods with some corrugated steel and some duct tape and some Inca Cola boxes, and you've got a house, dude. I'm serious. Yeah. That's how most people live there. I've seen it too. You know what I mean? Like that's like these shanty towns. It's just I mean, so like it is relative. I mean, not to kind of, I'm not, no pun intended, because we were just talking about the theory, but I mean, but I do agree with you that everybody's hurt is the same. Just because it's not our place to judge whether someone should be depressed or hurt. And that's another thing I learned in AA or program recovery, that something that stuck with me is that, yes, even if the power goes out and you can't make cookies that day, that's real to you. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Is it as real as like being in a war zone? No.
Yeah, no.
But it still hurts. It's people hurt. Your hurt is even though I wasn't molested as a kid, but I had things that hurt me as a kid. But someone who's molested, that might still hurt them.
Yeah.
That's probably, most people probably think that's a worse thing, but it doesn't make the feeling any different. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of the point you were kind of making, right?
The feeling, all our conversations can go round and round back to each other, because the feeling, I can bring it right back to how I can make more money at work by how am I making these customers feel by the words I'm choosing to use. Because at the end of the day, you might not know exactly what was said or how a situation transpired, but you will always know the feeling that you got from that interaction.
Absolutely.
And that's what like sticks the most. So I mean, that's a really good point.
It is, and that relates to everything. And that's kind of what I was talking about with music, with emotion. What you're doing with music, what makes good music is you're controlling someone's emotion while they're listening to your story. Mm-hmm. And there are ways to do that effectively that are just like writing an effective story. The imaginative part of music or writing, or the creative part, is a small part. It's important, but percentage wise, if you want to break things down, look at things in percentages. I'm not going to look at exact percentages because we can't. But yeah. It's not a very big percentage of what goes into making a good work of art. But it's the maybe arguably most important. The imagination. Do you know what I mean? That's the uniqueness of it. But that's a small part. Most of it are very fundamental, objective things that they're techniques. Do you know what I mean? And there's techniques. There's ways that people that do, the difference between a film score and a soundtrack.
A film score would be basically the soundtrack to the room, the scene, like, so like the clicking, clacking, and all that, right?
Well, it could be, but more specifically, a soundtrack is. And now these are also colloquial terms, really. But what we come to kind of that's I don't know that a dictionary would define it as such, but in our popular kind of like vocabulary, the soundtrack typically refers to the songs that are in movies with lyrics, like pop tunes,
like a popular song,
yeah, like a rock tune. And the soundtrack, the
film score.
The film score is actually the instrumental score that plays that dictates the emotion of the movie, right? Like it could be the opening theme, like Star Wars, da 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 da. But all those like little things, the music helps you know how you're supposed to feel, whether you realize that or not. When it's suspenseful, it gets suspenseful, right? The music gets tense. When it's happy, it's like when everybody's in love, then you hear like the violins playing, right? It elicits an emotional response. And so if you can control that, if you understand that, and if you can do that quickly, that's why a couple of years ago, I really started getting into how composers that compose score music to movies, what kind of progressions they chose, because what they do is they don't have time. Like if you have a pop tune, you got 3 minutes to tell your story and you got 3 minutes to take people on a ride.
Yeah.
But if you're watching it, you got like a second to go from happy to bad. Do you know what I mean? Right? And so composers have to do these radical shifts in emotion. If you can incorporate that in regular pop music that people listen to, you've got them. You've got them in the palm of your hand. If you control the emotive content of your music and you control the reaction. Again, it's using Hegelian dialectics, right? Here's what you have. Your song is the thesis. The people listening to it, their reaction to it is the antithesis. The synthesis is the result. You want them to like your song, right? So if you take them on an emotional ride quickly and you don't waste their time and you get to the point, they are going to at least respect you. They're going to understand you. You might not be their favorite. Aesthetically, they might not like the way your voice sounds. Like I said, they might like your clothes. They might like the way your drums sound, but there's nothing objective that they can really criticize you or dislike you for. You know what I mean? If you take care of everything that you can take care of, like a tautology, you've got no flaws in your fundamental rhythms. You've got no clashes. That's how I can say with honesty, like take a band like the Foo Fighters. I don't really think that they're terribly interesting. I mean, but there's nothing that I can say that there's nothing wrong with their music. Do you know what I mean? It's perfectly functional music, and people that like it, I understand why. Like to me, I think they're bands that do that kind of music that are a bit more interesting to me. That's all. You know what I mean? It's, but there's nothing that I can really objectively say they're terrible. Of course they're not terrible. Lots of people like them. You know what I mean? And they've kind of done that. You know what I mean? Now a band that does that, in my opinion, maybe has a little bit more imagination, are the truly great bands. The Beatles still do the same thing. If you look at the Beatles' music, even the dorky songs are fundamentally perfect. There's nothing wrong with them. Do you know what I mean? If you don't like a Beatles song, it's because you just don't like the way they sound.
Yeah.
It's the subjective. You know what I mean? And that's what I kind of try to do with really my everything, my life. Like, the impressions, the way I want to be in life. You know what I mean? I want to make sure. It's been a goal of mine since I was a teenager, that if someone doesn't like me, it's their fault. I'm serious.
Yeah.
And I think you can do that without being egotistical. I'm just saying, like, I want to make sure. Now, I'm not always successful in doing this. I'm just saying my goal is to make sure that I treat people with respect, that I don't do something that might make someone dislike me. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I take care of all that, then they can still dislike me, but I've done all I can do. Do you know what I mean? Like by not being a jerk and being respectful and things, just the typical things that would make you appealing to someone. You know what I mean? Just because life is easier that way. You know what I mean? Like when you're nice, it's easier. It just is. And then also relates to what I've done, like the teaching music. I mentioned that the other day. I played music my whole life, longer than I've been teaching it, but what I really enjoy more is teaching it. Like I said, because I really don't consider myself a music teacher. I teach people. You know what I mean?
It's a different connection with the individual. You're relating to this person because it's a one-on-one lesson, right? So you're getting to really know this person. Whereas if you're performing for someone, you're performing for a group, and you're really just there along for your ride, whereas the one-on-one lesson is more of a shared journey.
Yeah. And like you said, it's much, much more intimate because I'm not dividing my attention between however many people are in an audience, right? I've got, like you said, one person.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I don't know if this is so much my personality or just the role or a little of both. It's probably a little of both. I think people have always kind of felt comfortable talking to me about all their problems. But as a music teacher, at least in my experience over the last 34 years, you know what I mean? Like of doing this in one way or another, that I do become their therapist. Most of my students, it's pretty rare if I have a student that doesn't
Open up.
use me as a therapist. It's that same thing like the bartender, the hairdresser. Do you know what I mean? It's just, you're the one that's there. They're comfortable with you. You know what I mean? And you know, and I get my students comfortable pretty quickly just because it's, you know, I'm pretty honest, you know, because that can be intimidating with a teacher at first, that kind of, you know, because first of all, it takes some humility to admit that you need help with something, right? And that's not always fun, especially for young guys. You know, young guys, you know, teenagers, they want to be taken seriously. And I remember what that's like to be a young guy. It's a little different kind of, you kind of have to kind of fight a little. That's why young guys kind of overdo it a little. They just want to be taken seriously. They want to know that their ideas, they have good ideas. And it's just a different way. It's just younger guys just seem like they have to really kind of speak a little louder to be heard. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, and that's a natural thing. But, you know, so yeah, so it does take some humility just to come through the door and ask for help. You know what I mean, with something, right? And you know, and then also it can be embarrassing, you know, something that you don't know. But I very quickly try to disarm them just because I know how to do something that they don't. It's not because I'm smarter. No. I've just been doing it longer. Like that, I've just had more time. It's
you know? Knowledge, and you're not going to know everything.
No. And knowledge is just what you've accumulated. It's funny that you mentioned that. You know, intelligence is really your aptitude. You know what I mean? Your ability to learn and retain.
And recite.
And understand. You know what I mean? What you're learning, right? And so, you know, knowledge doesn't impress me. That just means, I mean, now it's not uncommon for those to have a strong link. Like generally people that have good memories and can understand what they're reading tend to be smart people, right? But it's not necessarily the case. I mean, it helps, right? But the knowledge is just what you've acquired. That's just what's in your bank.
Yeah, and
you know what I mean?
There's different types of knowledge too. Like everybody always talks about book smart and street smart. I mean, growing up in DC, you had to be, you know, street smart real quick.
Yeah, you just won't have anything.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, just forget when I was a kid, be out of toys intimate. You know what I mean? Like, just, or as an adult, there's people who are going to make dollars off you, cigarette, whatever you have, you're going to lose. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to give it away. I'm just telling you, so you're absolutely right. You learn street smarts pretty quick. I mean, I never thought that I was going to get killed as a kid. Probably because I just was not smart enough to realize how close I came to getting killed a couple of times. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? Just because everybody does. It's a city. There's just stuff there that can kill you. Not just on purpose, but just falling off the metro. You know, I got stuck in it one time. That's what they call the subway there. Oh, shit. And my mom couldn't hear me calling her. I was probably 4 years old. And I got my foot stuck in between the metro and the platform. And they're electric there. And the first, right underneath my foot, would have been about 4 feet under my foot, is the power line for the train. And it's like 2,600 volts. I would have died immediately.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? As soon as that, well, first of all, as soon as the train took off, it would.
Or you could have become Thor.
Thor, I know. Oh, man, if maybe I should have. But some woman just noticed me and just yanked me out of there, like just a reaction. You know what I mean? I was mom. You know, it's like I said, it couldn't have been more than 4. We took the metro everywhere. You know, like just that's what people do. And but yeah, there's some just random woman just grabbed my arm and just yanked me out, you know, like just real quick before the train took off, you know. And so anyway, yeah, so there's just more stuff, you know, more ways that you can make mistakes. You fall off a building, you know what I mean? You don't see many buildings that are, you know, 22 stories high here, you know what I mean? It's like that just stuff happens, you know. And so, but yeah, so, you know, and you do grow up, and it's just it's just one of the things that's required. I don't think it's really special. You know what I mean? Like there, it's just if you're going to exist, you're going to need some street smarts.
If you're going to get by, yeah, that's the bare minimum. That's your baseline. So that's in like that's at the bottom of the triangle. You need street smart, food, shelter. Yeah,
it just you know, like you just, no one stays there for very long without getting it. It's, you know what I mean? It's just you can't. You just can't. You know, that's just so funny. My wife, you know, seeing her like, when we first got together, you know, talked to these people that were obviously just begging. I don't have a problem with people begging for money at all. You know what I mean? I grew up with it. You know what I mean? But, don't lie to me. You know what I mean? It's like your girlfriend's been 4 months pregnant every single month that I come here. Like this is seriously like, you've been doing this for a year, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like she's not 4 months pregnant. You guys are on meth. Like, that's fine. I'll give you $2. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? But it's like, just can't with the story. That's why you saw like people in DC are just honest, man. Like, I'm serious, man. Like there's a guy who lived in Georgetown. You ever heard of Georgetown's like a part of DC, right?
Yep.
And so right across the river from, Virginia, right on the Virginia side, across Georgetown is Langley, Virginia, right where the FBI had.
Pentagon.
Pentagon is in Pentagon City, but it's on the other side.
Oh,
so CIA headquarters right there. It's right there on the GW Parkway. I passed it every morning. You know what I mean? Like at one point in my life, driving to work, and so. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Georgetown. Yeah, this guy, he just had a sign on his chest that said, "Look, I need money for drugs and alcohol." And people just, sure, thank you, finally. You know what I mean? Like, just.
Isn't that a Mitch Hedberg, like, joke punchline?
Maybe that's where he got it from, I guess.
Yeah.
But he was there, and he just lived he was just the guy, like, in Georgetown that would just walk up and down, like, on Friday nights, and all the people at bars. Because Georgetown, later, not so much when my father was younger, but... it's pretty fancy. That's a pretty expensive part of town now. That's where Georgetown University is, and it's in the bars there. Like the more, they're just nicer. Do you know what I mean? Like the restaurants and bars, it's just a nicer part of town.
Upscaled,
yeah. And the houses are expensive. I mean, they're expensive. $2 million, $3 million. You wouldn't tell just because real estate's so much. The economy is so much different than DC. What would look like to us, like maybe a $200,000 house would be more like $800,000 in DC, like just a regular house. Do you know what I mean? It's just, that's just, the economy's different. You make more, you spend more, everybody lives the same way, like my little tiny house, the last one that I lived at with my ex-wife, we bought that in 2006. It was like the very end of 2006. It was a $327,000 house. That was tiny. It was a tiny little row house. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom.
Dang.
And that's what things, and that was incredibly cheap for DC. Like, you know what I mean? Like friends of ours had one in Capitol Hill. He works for the Fed. He's a PhD economist. This guy that one of the girls that we grew up with married. At the same time he bought that, he bought a $1.5 million row house in Capitol Hill. That when I was a kid was a dump. That's where they dealt crack. It was one of the first neighborhoods to get gentrified. Because I remember being like, these are $1.5 million. Well, first of all, these are clean now and they have windows. And I was like, oh my God, they're $1.5 million. Like that. This is where people used to die. Like, do you know what I mean? Like it was the garbage. That was the first Southeast DC when I was a kid. Historically, was where the drug dealers, where cops didn't even bother going. That's where the projects were. The way that the DC projects are arranged, and I think in other cities too, like Chicago, is like this too. Detroit, the project housing is arranged kind of in a maze. So, and it's done that to kind of keep them in, but so they don't come and bother other people. I mean, it's very insidious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also what that does is cops just don't go in because they get trapped. There's no death penalty in DC. So killing a cop is nothing.
What?
For in DC. No. Cops get killed all the time. Drug dealers, when I was a kid in Southeast, drug dealers, it was like, Southeast DC was almost like its own autonomous zone.
Yeah.
Where the highest ranking drug dealer was basically the mayor of that part of town.
Wow.
Cops didn't even go in. It just wasn't worth it. You know what I mean? Like it's just, they'd get stuck, they get trapped, they couldn't find, you know what I mean? It just wasn't. Now I don't think that's like that. Again, the gentrification of that part of town started almost 20 years ago and hasn't stopped. So I don't think anything's really much like that anymore. You know what I mean? But that's certainly how it was when I was a kid. And I knew this guy, a guy that was very good friends with someone that I grew up with, was a drug dealer for a while. And his boss was he told me, like, basically it's like in the movies, kind of like, he had a hierarchy. He said, look, you just put out a text, or a message, like, this guy needs to get got tonight. The first one gets him, gets paid. You know what I mean? So he basically had, like, this guy that my friend worked for had a bunch of guys like my friend, my friend through a friend, basically, like just regular dealers that you'd go and you'd buy drugs from, like not a lot. Like he wasn't like a big time trafficker. He was just your regular dealer hung up at strip clubs.
Yeah,
you know what I
gotcha.
mean? So he had like 20 guys like that worked for him, but he also had like 10 guys that were like gunmen that worked for him, and they would just scatter when he'd need someone taken care of. They would scatter. Wow. I hope this guy's not listening, dude. Like, I don't know if this guy's still active, dude. I shouldn't be this. You know what I mean? Like,
You haven't had any names.
No, that's true. I've done that. That's on purpose because the guy the drug dealer got out of that and actually really turned his life around. He never was a drug user, but he was a degenerate ass drug dealer, like a cutthroat jerk. Do you know what I mean? And then he just got the crap beat out of him one night and just almost died. You know, had brain surgery and turned his life around, went and reconnected with the father, went back to school, got a good job. Nothing, you wouldn't even recognize that he was like a real
In that deep.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so
did you get into anything else other than alcohol?
Oh yeah, like not like a lot. Like alcohol was always the thing for me. Like I smoked a lot of pot when I was a kid. A very brief period of time, I did cocaine kind of regularly, just for about a 9-month period. I think when I was about 30, but that was really just so I could drink more. You know, honestly, like I you know, I mean, it was literally. I mean, it was really just that. I mean, I wasn't. It was just really that, because it allowed me to stay up and I could drink more alcohol.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So that was really just but you know, I wouldn't say that nothing to like
no like
a serious
meth
problem
or crack or never tried any of that.
No, I was kind of lucky with meth. Meth is something that was not on the East Coast really when I was a kid. That's something that's made its way from the West over towards the East. You know what I mean? Like it started really like in the 60s. That's how the Hells Angels initially started making money. Became, went from just like a regular club to like a money making organization, was trafficking meth through California and then to these Western states and getting it inward. And so I grew up with a crack and heroin epidemic. Yeah. So I knew enough about that. At least I did a little research. I was getting to that age where I started getting curious about that. Like I knew enough that, that no matter with opiates and crack, which is kind of like, it's not an opiate, but it has this effect that I'm going to mention. With opiates, you don't have to have you don't have to be an addict to get addicted to opiates. It has
a physical grab.
Yeah, those are the kind of medications that it's a guarantee if you take them more than just a few times, you will become dependent in some manner. Yeah, you can stop. You know what I mean? But again, those drugs like a morphine drip, like people that are dying, like when my wife's father passed away last year, and once they get that morphine in the hospice, there's zero coming back from that. You know what I mean? Like that's the end. You know what I mean? Like, and so it doesn't matter if you're an addictive personality or not. So no, I knew enough about that to just stay away from that. You know what I mean? So when I was younger, my first wife and I, we did acid over a year and a half period of time. We probably did acid maybe 8 or 9 times. I think that's enough for that. Like that acid is so strong. It's, as far as hallucinogens go, that's one of those things I think you really don't have to do once or twice. It doesn't really change. Like mushrooms are different. Like that's a more natural thing. And acid's just kind of like the super, like the crack version of that. Do you know what I mean? It's just a super intense. Although I couldn't see someone getting addicted to hallucinogens. I just don't think that.
I don't think your brain allows it.
No, you'd go nuts. You'd go crazy, like literally. I just don't think that your perception, it's so different, But yeah, I think I was just fortunate that crystal meth was not really something that I had ever heard of until much later. I mean, even I'd never seen it. It was funny when I first got out here, back home, there's these, let me just grab my water real quick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, thank you. There are commercials like anti-crack and anti-heroin commercials, and then when I moved out here, I saw anti-meth commercials, right? Like, don't do meth, kids. You know what I mean? This could be you. And it's like, I was like, oh wow, it's so different. Like, it's like nobody even does this back home yet. But I'd known that it was a Western thing that's moved its way inward. I mean, now it's, again, I haven't lived back. I haven't even visited back home in 11 years. So I'm sure. I shouldn't say I'm sure. It wouldn't surprise me at all if it was rampant there. But when I was there, it was. And I was just talking to Thomas the other day that I also was just a little too old to get into ecstasy. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that was kind
because of the scene.
Yeah, and by the time people really started doing that, I was already out of high school. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and so I certainly did the things that people did that were my age, you know what I mean? Like, which was, back then was primarily marijuana and acid and mushrooms. And occasionally someone might have a little coke. Like the first time I tried a little coke one time when I was like 19, but I didn't do it again for, I think almost 10 years. You know what I mean? Like I just tried. I never really like stuff that sped me up, again, is when, I wasn't always, alcoholism does progress. And so when I was 15, I was an alcoholic, but I wasn't drinking anywhere near as much as I did by the time I was 40, after 25 years of being an alcoholic. Yeah. When I was 15, I could drink 8 beers. And but by the time I was 40, it turned into like 24 to 30 and a bottle of liquor and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I hit it pretty well. It's funny. I remember the first time when I was, I think I was probably 31 or 32, about your age. First time I ever got DTs. I didn't know what was going on. Do you know what I mean? I had no idea. I thought I was having a heart attack. Do you know what I mean? I woke up one morning and I was just tense. Like my heart was pounding through my chest. Mm-hmm. I was like, couldn't take a deep breath. I was just freaking out. You know what I mean? And and so I drove myself to the hospital. I thought I was having a heart attack. You know what I mean? Like I thought something was going on, and knew nothing really about. I mean, I knew a lot about alcoholism, but I thought I was way too young for something like that at that point. You know what I mean? It's like the people in my family that had the. Yeah, I've known since I was 20 or even 18 that one day I was going to end up quitting drinking. I just knew that I had a couple decades. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't going to be that. When I was 18, why would someone who's 18 quit drinking? You've got nothing. You haven't even lost anything yet. You're not even going to appreciate it. In fact, I actually recommend programs of recovery. I recommend young people don't even bother with them. I'm serious. I know that sounds funny.
Yeah.
Unless it's like heroin or something, because a young person that quits drinking is going to start drinking again. It's just your life is not messed up enough yet at 21.
Yeah.
You can't. You haven't lived long enough to mess like real stuff up, dude. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So what? So your girlfriend, your stupid little girlfriend, dumped you that you dated for 1 week. I mean, you're a kid. You know what I mean? You haven't lost your job. You haven't lost like a real wife that you've been with for 15 years. Mm-hmm. You haven't lost. I'm just speaking general. You haven't lost your kids. You haven't gone to jail. You know what I mean? Like people, you go to A rooms. People have got. You want to talk about people with real problems, man? You know what I mean? I mean, people that have the IRS hundreds of thousands of dollars are in jail for back child support again, tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars, have no chance of seeing their kids, have screwed their lives up. You know what I mean? And the only thing they hang their hat on is they're not drinking today. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, so you just don't get to that point at 22. I'm sorry, man. You know what I mean? Like you're still young and cute at that point. Like if anything, you just get you can con someone to taking care of you for at least a couple weeks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like, no, you've not you've not hit rock bottom yet. More power to them if they do. And some do for years, but it's one of those things that you're ready for it. When I was ready, it was just my time. I accepted. I knew it would happen. I knew that I'd known ever since pretty much my first drink. I knew how it made me feel, and I knew how all of my family was pretty much. Mm-hmm. And I just knew it was just a matter of, at some point, it's just going to be one of those things I can't do anymore. Just like at some point, it's likely that any number of things I won't be able to do like I used to. You know, like I already can't. You know what I mean? I do some of the things that I used to do. I never was a real big person to begin with, and I can carry even less than I used to. I hate carrying stuff now. You know what I mean? It's like it's just but that's just part of. And what's so weird with me? It happens always 2 months before something significant. Like I stopped growing 2 months before my 13th birthday. And then my knee started hurting 2 months before my 35th birthday. And then 2 months in August this past year, all of a sudden my back started hurting. I've always been like that. Like it's just weird. Like with my body's pretty regular. Like these milestones, it just happens. And then it's just, and now I could still like squat down. It's more of a process. It's more preparation that goes into it now. Like I don't just squat down with like willy-nilly without thinking about how I'm going to without getting up. There's got to be like an exit strategy here. I can't just stay on the ground all day. Like, what I mean? I got to make sure I can get up, which requires me to be near something I can grab if I have to, and make sure that my back is straight when I go to squat down. Do you know what I mean? Like it's different now, But anyway, that's boring people with my age, and I'm sounding like all the other old idiots that I used to hate listening to when I was younger. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny how dumb your parents are when you're a teenager and how smart they are the older you get.
Exactly.
Isn't it funny?
You start relying on them again. It's that there's that period where like I know everything.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, late 20s, 30s or something like that. Most people will kind of start to rely on their parents again.
Yeah.
For information.
Yeah, and also another thing too, that's where all the forgiveness comes. You know what I mean? I think people have a tendency to like view their parents as having to be perfect, or why should, you know, they're the adults, they should know better, or they're the adults, or they're the ones that chose to have kids, so they should be perfect, and that's not the way things are.
Nope.
So I think another thing too, like that time, that age you mentioned too, I started, not that I had a lot of grudges, you know, I didn't have a bad child. There was never a time in my life where I ever wasn't 100% positive that both my parents loved me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I always had unconditional love from my parents. You know what I mean? I didn't always like them. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't always get along. You know what I mean? But I didn't really have a lot of resentments. But I think what really made me kind of understand just that your parents, just because your parents doesn't mean that they're any different than you, is when I started being the age that my parents were, when I remember things they did. Like, you know what I mean? And that's that age. Like I told you, my father was 24 when I was born. My mother was a month away from her 22nd birthday. So, you know, I remember my mom being 26, 27, 25, 26, 27. I remember my parents being young people, you know what I mean? And very, very vividly, you know what I mean? Like being you know, once I was like, man, I am anything but together. Oh my God. Like not only am I not together, but I'm getting worse. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting more into drinking. I'm getting asked to not do things. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? It's like not only, so I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay, when my father was 28, he had a 4-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I had no problems like that. I had nothing that, my dogs depended on me, but even then I just let them out once a day and give them food. Like it wasn't like nothing relied on me, like other than my students wanted to learn from me. But I mean, if I died, nothing would have happened. You know what I mean? Like I would, you know, like no one would have missed out if I, you know what I mean? They would, you know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't have, you know, so I was just thinking, geez, man, all I do is drink and play music. Oh my God, my dad actually had to support me. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy. I was like, man, if I don't make money, I just wait until next month where I make money again. Like, I'm just got myself to, if I spend all my money on some instrument or something, that just means I just don't buy something else. I was like, oh my God, you know, like, and I started really thinking about that, and really, again, another thing that I kind of passed on to my students. You know, why should they have to take years to learn the stuff that took me years to learn? My teachers didn't. You know, my teachers learn stuff over the course of a lifetime that they told me in 5 minutes. That's a benefit of having a teacher. You know what I mean? And you know, that's how I am with my students. Like I said, I always let them know that it's your lesson. If you've got something that you want to work on specifically, then we'll do that, right? And if not, I'll suggest something I think you should work on and see if you want to do that. Now, oftentimes, what I think someone should work on has nothing in their, they might not even realize how it has to do with music. It have nothing to do with, at least on the surface, like with music. Yeah. But it does ultimately, everything relates to it because it's going to make them a better person. You know what I mean? But if I think someone's really lacking in some historical knowledge, then we're going to talk about history. I do it all the time. You know what I mean? And my students are fine with it because when they want to do something, it also motivates them. If they don't want to have a history lesson, they better think of a song they want to learn how to play next time. You know what I mean? If you come in with nothing, you might not like what you get. You know what I mean? Like you might sit here and we're going to talk about, you know, all the factors that led up to the Civil War and what a bunch of baloney we've been taught about that. And we might talk about, you know, the fact, whatever. Like it's that if you don't have something, it's up to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you should know it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and it's like, but you know, so it doesn't matter to me. You know what I mean? I've got a lot of students and I got a lot of people to talk to. And I got cats. And according to my wife, I'm fairly enamored with the sound of my own voice. So I'm going to talk regardless of who's listening. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I already know this stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like, however you want to spend it. Yeah. Briefly about you mentioned arguing. You know how you win every argument?
How do you win or how do you make sure the argument's over?
No, just how you can absolutely 100% every single time win every argument you're in.
What is it, John?
You don't argue about anything you're not 100% sure you're right about, that you can't prove quickly. It's that easy. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's so stupid. Like, if you're telling me, if I know something, right? Like I told you, I met Joe Theismann. I told you that Washington won the Super Bowl after the 1982 season. Mm-hmm. There's nothing in the world that anybody could tell me that would make me not believe that, because I watched that. I even went to a game that this was awesome. Best day of my life was that year. One of the best days that I ever had. My father, I'll get to in a moment. Remind me, because it's hilarious. Right. Anyway, you try to tell me that happened in 1983. We were fighting until I prove it to you. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. But other than that, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. There's no reason. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Again, is that cheating? No. I just choose not to argue something that I don't know what I'm talking about. Why would I argue that?
Well, don't argue with fools.
Yeah, or just I'd be the fool if I was arguing about something that I wasn't 100% sure I was right about. Yeah. I don't argue about people's opinions. I'm not going to argue with that. But if you tell me a fact, if you tell me the Battle of Hastings was in 1067 and not 1066, then I'm just going to basically say, look, do you want to lose this right now, or do you want to talk about it for an hour?
Yeah.
I can look it up and just show you. You can lose it in 10 seconds if you want. Well, maybe it might take me 4 minutes. I use my phone today. but that's, I don't know. It just, that kind of occurred to me as like, that's like kind of a debating technique. Do you know what I mean? Again, It kind of falls in line with you keeping control, even if you're nice to customers. And see, this is where manipulation techniques aren't always bad. And this is something that my teacher taught me, Paul, the one that really spent the more emotional stuff, like the more spiritual, if you will, the kind of the ability that we have. We have the ability to do a lot of stuff, and we have the ability as humans to essentially to really manipulate and control our reality and the world around us much more than we realize, most of us realize. And if you use those techniques, if you understand this and you use psychological techniques of manipulation for a good purpose, it's fine. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I use psychological manipulation techniques all the time to get kids to understand how to do stuff. Not because I want them to do it, but just you have to find a way to relate, to get them to understand. I'm not doing anything because I'm only manipulating them. I'm only manipulating their brain to work in a logical way. Mm-hmm. That's it. Do you know what I mean? Now, and he said, bad things will happen if you use this stuff for bad. You know what I mean? It's like, again, just like magic. You know what I mean? It's not really magic. What we're doing, I'm not suggesting that we have the, certain psychic abilities or anything like that. I'm just saying there's ways that you can control every situation. Always.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Always. And if you know that...
Or you can actually just stack the cards in your favor.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as long as it's for a noble purpose, there's nothing wrong with that. In my opinion, there's nothing. What's wrong with me tricking a kid into learning a scale? I mean, he's going to like the scale. Like, you know what I mean? It's not going to hurt him. You know what I mean? He'll either never use it or know how to use it. It's either neutral or positive. Yeah. I'm never hurting anybody. You know what I mean? Like when I do things like that, it's just mostly, I'm just trying to get things to happen more quickly. You know what I mean? Even with, people I play with and stuff, like little things I'll drop, little hints, little things I'll say. It's because I know how they'll react to it. I know how they'll take it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't think that's it's being manipulative in a sense without a negative connotation. It's just, it's just understanding what I can do to help something, that's kind of the way I look at it. Yeah. I'm not not really placing a value judgment on that. I would never manipulate someone for a nefarious purpose, or like a malicious way. I wouldn't. You know what I mean? I again, that goes against how Paul taught me. You know what I mean? And it goes against how if you understand this stuff, you don't do it for a bad purpose, and you can't be a jerk. It just doesn't work. It ultimately doesn't work. I know it sounds funny, and I know it sounds hokey, and it sounds hippie, and I know I was raised by hippies.
A little bit of karma.
Yeah, but it's so true, and I see that more and more the older I get. And the more I really realize that when you do play music, you really are just playing yourself. You're telling your story on your instrument, no matter what type of music you're playing. And if your story's nothing but a bunch of jerk stuff, no one wants to listen to that. You can't. It's impossible. You can't be a gigantic jerk. I mean, you can have flaws. I'm not saying you have to be a perfect person. And which is also funny too. My students, when they realize I do regular people stuff, I think students have a tendency to put their teachers on pedestals.
Yeah.
And think that I just go somewhere when I'm not teaching them lessons. I'm off on somewhere on Superstition Mountain meditating. And you know what I mean? Like this with my legs like in lotus position. No, I'm not. I'm watching TV. I'm reading articles. I eat food. I eat cheeseburgers. Yeah. And one time, another guy studied with Paul, and one guy I went to school with, I said, you got to study with Paul. If you want to work on your training, best guy I know for that. You know what I mean? So he was this friend of mine, Austin. We were kids at the time. So I loved him. Started studying with him for a while. Did this throw off the levels?
No,
it didn't sound better. Okay, good. Okay. But I remember one time he got there early and Paul was still finishing dinner. He's like, yeah, I was so surprised. He was just like sitting on his couch eating a cheeseburger, watching TV. I was like, well, he's a person, right? Like he just happens to be good at teaching music. I mean, he still does everything else that we do, he hopefully, what I mean? Ostensibly. It's just kind of funny. It's funny. My students are always surprised that I watch like stupid movies like Hot Rod sometimes. Mm-hmm. They're like, "Oh, you're not serious all the time." And just
when you're having these serious conversations, like every time they're in class, like trying to teach them about history, and then you're like, "Oh yeah, I just watched the Masked Singer or something."
Yeah,
what?
They're like, wait, it's like it seems like there's like a disconnect or something.
That happens. It's like, as when you're in elementary school and you see your teacher only at school, and then you happen to run into them at the grocery store. You're like, wait, what? Don't you live at the school? Like, when you're a kid, you think your teacher just lives at the school, right?
I know. Yeah, I know. It's just funny. It also too reminds me too. One thing that I cannot stand. This is the pet peeve. I have no reason to get upset at this, and I understand why people say this. Yeah. But my least favorite.
Hopefully it's something I've said like 20 times today.
No. But my least favorite phrase in any language that I understand is that it was a simpler time back then. That's the biggest load of garbage. There's never been a time when Earth has been simple. The only thing that was simple was you, moron, because you were 4
and oblivious.
Yes, and because you could you had no choice because we're 4 or 5 or 6. I mean, I remember the first time. When I was 6 years old. 3 things happened within a few months of each other that was the first time that I understood really what death was about. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Okay, my father's younger brother passed away at 27 from just decimating his body with pills and alcohol for so long. Do you know what I mean? Just massive liver failure. Just my father was the one that discovered him like that. And so that was in August. And then December 9th, John Lennon was assassinated in 1980. Right?
Yeah.
And then in January, Ronald Reagan was attempted to be assassinated by Mark David Chapman. So bam, bam, bam. As a 6-year-old person with no concept before really what death was. I knew that death was a thing that happened.
Yeah.
But I didn't know anybody who died. You know what I mean? I'd never, no one in my family had died. No one close to me had died. Oh, and one more. This same year, right after Scott, my father's brother passed away in September. My mom's first cousin, Donnie, was a test pilot in the Navy, and there's those vertical takeoff and landing jets. Mm-hmm. The original ones, the Harriers, crash all the time. He died in a crash. Oh, so he died. And that was all bam, bam, bam. So within the span of, 5 months, I experienced my first deaths. You know what I mean? All right there. You know what I mean? And so I remember.
And everybody else's reactions to that death, to those deaths.
Yeah. So it's just, and nothing scarring about it, but it was just very abruptly. It just out of nowhere, it just seemed like this kind of foreign concept to me. And then, this is really, this is forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no more John Lennon songs. Do you know what I mean? It's like I used to just take, when I was a kid, I would take my parents' albums and 8-tracks and their LPs and mostly just play them. If I didn't know them, like who the artist was, I would just play one that had a cool album cover. That would initially, I would just, let me hear what this sounds like. If I didn't like it, I'd try a different one.
Yeah.
But, the Beatles, Beatles and Stevie Wonder, my mom was more into kind of like Motown sound, and my father was more into the more rock type stuff. And so, those 2 artists, the Beatles and Stevie Wonder, I again, artists I don't ever remember not knowing who they were or what their voices sound like instantly. You know what I mean? That's just been a part of my life since it predates me being aware of being alive, right?
Yeah.
And so, where was I going with that? I'm sorry, I'm getting old, dude. I'm forgetting stuff, dude.
You're saying it. I don't know. I gotta go to the bathroom, so we're gonna need to wrap this up. But you told me to bring this back to your dad at the national football game. Because they're no longer called.
Are we just take it? Do you want to just take a second, just like a break?
No, because I gotta get going here in a little bit.
Oh yeah, cool.
So let's do and then we'll do this again soon, obviously. But the story, one of the greatest days of your life at the football game.
Yeah, this is killer. And now, totally fun. There's nothing to really learn here. Do you know what I mean? It was just a fun day.
And I want to end it on a fun note.
Yeah. Okay. So this is killer, right? So Washington, right? We got tickets. We always found a way to get tickets. They used to always sell out, right? It was hard to get tickets to the game, but we always knew people that would give us. So my dad and I got these tickets, right? And it was an important game, right? And Washington was playing New York, right? So they're playing the same division. So we play them twice a year. Lawrence Taylor, second year in the league, was a killer player.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it was wicked. And it was snowing. It was cool. It was in December. It was snowing. It was a super, super close game. And at the end of the game, Mark Mosley kicked a field goal that simultaneously set the single season or most consecutive field goals without a miss record, won the game, and sent the Redskins to the playoffs. Washington to the playoffs for the first time in a long time. It had been like 6 or 7 years. You know what I mean? And so the game was so exciting. It was 15-13. And it was muddy. It was snowing. We were in the end zone, and most of the game was on the far side, except for the very end. All the kick was on my side. Yeah. And the whole place went nutso. I mean, the old stadium the Washington used to play in was RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Stadium. And it was old and rickety, and it would actually really bounce and stuff. And so I was like this, and it was snowing and snow coming down. And right, so that was just killer, right? Just really fun. My dad and I had a great time. We were screaming, shouting, but even better, since it was snowing, people started making snowballs and have a snowball fight. So since I was little and cute and 8, right?
Yeah.
These girls started picking me up and using me as a human shield, and my back totally got like a bunch of boob action, like at 8 years old, dude, like just blocking snowball. I was like, I'll do this all day, man. Snowballs don't hurt.
Yeah.
This feels great. You know what I mean? Like I said, they were just passing me around, like, you know, oh, you're so cute. And I'm like, this is awesome. You know what I mean? I was like, yes, this is great. And my dad had to stop at his work to get a bunch of stuff. And he just had his Christmas party that like 2 nights before.
Yeah.
So then I just ate all the leftover candy. It was just like a kid's perfect day.
Dude.
I mean, at 8 years old, that's a killer day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, so yeah, my back got some for the first time.
Yeah.
Candy, snow, good football. Like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, hanging out with my dad, which is always awesome, you know?
Wow. You and your dad look back and reminisce on that day?
All the time. Yeah. Like, it's just like, that's, yeah, both of us remember like everything about that. I remember even the songs that were playing like on the radio, like because my dad always listened to really hip stuff. He was still young, so he was always listening to like stuff at back then, 1982, like the cutting edge stuff, like, you know, way into like Talking Heads and,
yeah.
You know, like Echo and the Bunnymen, these old like early 80s Bauhaus, these like really cool, you know, somewhat, you know, different groups, you know what I mean? Like kind of stuff, you know, that first early, what they called new wave back then. My father was really into really cool stuff, you know, Devo, you know, neat kind of stuff. And there was a local station, an independent station in Washington for a long time called WHFS that everyone, if anyone grew up in Washington, will recognize that instantly. You know what I mean? That was the station that played cool stuff. Yeah, back then. Yeah. But
awesome, man.
Well, dude, thank you so much, dude. This has been a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Like
it was better than I thought, man. Like I already knew it was gonna be good, but this was amazing. And there's definitely some points we gotta retouch on the next time we do this.
Sure, because stuff is important. I think it's important to me. I think it's good stuff to think about. Like I enjoy it anyway. You know,
good. As long as you enjoy it, it shows and it rubs off on other people, and definitely rubbing off on me. So, thanks for setting some time aside. Beautiful little studio you guys are working with here, and can't wait to do it again, man.
Absolutely, anytime.
John Palmer, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks, man.
Absolutely.